Wait, chat? Chat, are we back? Hold? Chat, are we back?
Moves very similarly to the common species, but
We,
is
we
generally
might we might have
faster and
lost we might have
stronger.
lost some people,
It is also more
but
cunning,
we're back.
actively including fake-outs and deception into its movements. Its claws are blackened from the blood of its prey, and the darker they are, the more dangerous the individual is likely to be. Add to this its highly destructive roars, and the brute Tigrex is an unstoppable force.
Yeah, clearly it was an unstoppable
Nearly
force.
unstoppable. Its heightened metabolism makes it ferocious and strong, but its stamina is quite limited due to the aforementioned energy inefficiency. So while it can
No,
rampage
me
in ways
is that
the common
we were
species could
always
only
here. We
dream
never
of,
left. We
the
never
brute
left.
Tigrex will exhaust much faster. And it can, of course, not stalk prey into colder regions. Its true power can only be unleashed among fire and ash. The brute Tigrex remains the topic of much research and debate to this day. One recent discovery that has led to much talk in guild halls is its appearance in the New World. While it was found in the expected areas, volcanic zones such as the Elder's Recess, it was also seen living in the Rotten Vale and in the corpse heap of the Guiding Lands.
I hope you guys took a clip of that.
While these zones aren't
crunch.
exactly cold, they aren't particularly warm.
And why is it that every time the Tigrex is on the screen, it's like after me? It's like directly at me.
Either. So the appearance of brute Tigrex in them
See, like
is
it's still
quite
angled at me.
A few theories immediately began popping up. The most reasonable explanation is that the brute Tigrex can sustain itself on the enormous volume of cadavers and meat in those areas, so its body is able to maintain a surplus of energy that it usually does not have.
Ooh, Miu.
A more daring theory proposes that there might be as of yet unknown benefits to letting the effluvium, airborne bacteria endemic to these areas of the New World, bond and fuse with the brute T-Rex's skin, and that the wyvern seeks out these corpse heaps for that reason. More research remains necessary. For a long time, these two subspecies of the genus
we don't do
Tigrex
that on this channel.
were considered the last direct descendants of the wyvern rex. It was already a great discovery, and the guild would have been satisfied if this was all there were.
Don't talk to me. You gotta get through Kai for that one.
Who could have known that the next discovery would be the greatest of them all?
Wait, there's more Tigrex?
Around this time, another research priority of the guild was the further exploration of Fonron, the eastern continent littered in massive forests and long abandoned ruins. In terms of ecology and archaeology, it might as well be a different planet compared to the central continent. Many distinct and fascinating species were found, such as the Nargacuga and Diapnocatris. Simultaneously, the ruins opened up an entire ocean of questions, as murals and towers implied cultures and civilizations of the distant, foggy past. But one feature of Fonron was especially relevant to those researching flying wyverns. All across the continent, explorers kept finding what looked like Tigrex tracks.
Wait, don't tell me.
Claw marks and footprints that matched
the only thing that's worse than a cockroach is a flying cockroach.
But these tracks were enormous, nearly twice the size of even the largest recorded Tigrex. In fact, they were much closer in size to the kind of tracks the original wyvern rex would have left behind.
Okay, Miu. I guess you're the one who's raising
of finding a living, breathing wyvern rex may seem absurd, but on Fonron, it seemed plausible. The primordial forest that covers nearly half of the entire explored zone is itself a time capsule, inhabited by many plants and trees that likely covered the world eons ago. If any habitat would be able to preserve an isolated population of an ancient species, this would be it. With fervor, researchers descended onto the continent. For a long time, this endeavor seemed fruitless, and the existence of this massive wyvern became little more than a rumor. That is, until, to the massive shock of the guild, they finally found the creator of those tracks. It was not a wyvern rex, but instead a rare subspecies of tigrex, later classified under the name molten tigrex. While it is not identical to the wyvern rex, the molten tigrex is the closest any creature could get to it. Like its famous ancestor, it is enormous, generally about twice as large as a common tigrex. And like
What?
the brute tigrex, it displays a unique coloration.
Why is it
Blood
like,
red skin with black
you know what we can do to the lava T-Rex? Make it molten.
blackened areas on the front limbs and face.
It's red, so it's bad.
Beyond that, it mostly resembles a gigantic tigrex. This gigantism was the first topic of scholarly curiosity. Did it remain huge while its related species of the tigrex genus shrunk? Or did it re-evolve gigantism after losing it alongside its sister species? And whichever is the case, why did it happen? Evidence suggests that molten tigrex did in fact shrink at some point, similarly to what happened to the common and brute tigrex species. The currently accepted hypothesis is that the entire genus of tigrex still possesses the genes that codify gigantism, but that those genes require certain conditions to actually activate. Conditions that were fulfilled in the age of the wyvern rex, but are no longer the case in the modern central continent. Funron seems to be the only place where this gene can still activate, so those conditions might relate to prey abundance, or even to the amount of oxygen in the air, since Funron's Great Forest saturates the continent with it.
I hope we get to go to Fun Run
Whatever may be
in
the
Wilds.
exact cause, the molten
It always
tigrex is
sounds like
assumed
everything
to be a
that's
descendant of the wyvern
awful
rex
is in Fun
that
Run.
was able to reactivate the gigantism gene due to the unique environment that Funron offers. The fact that no small tigrex, molten or otherwise, has ever been found on Funron seems to support this hypothesis. Regardless of how it got there, once the molten tigrex was discovered on Funron, it was studied and observed rigorously. Due to its size, it's actually a fairly slow and sluggish creature, usually seen lumbering around the tower ruins when it's not on the hunt. It seems to only venture into the Great Forest for food, and sticks close to the ruined cities otherwise. Being so large and having all the other strengths of the tigrex genus, the molten tigrex has no natural competitors and is a fairly calm creature as a result. When on the hunt, however, or disturbed by a rare challenger, it will display the same ferocity as its brethren. The power of a molten tigrex is nearly...
Wait. Are you telling me that when they made these games, it's like, oh, we have the T-Rex and the molten T-Rex. And then they went through this like whole entire essay, like this whole segment right here, just to make this guy? How are you supposed to find that out? Did you just cook this shit?
unmatched.
Like during death
Like
and
the
just
brute
didn't tell
T-Rex,
anybody?
it has a massively boosted metabolism that empowers large, deadly muscles. But unlike the brute
Really sure.
T-Rex, the molten T-Rex does not have to worry about body temperature. Due to its massive size, it has a much easier time heating its own body, as, in accordance with the square cube law, it has less relative surface area to lose heat from. In fact, the molten T-Rex maintains an exceptionally high body temperature thanks to its metabolism and its modified heart, called the Blast Heart by the Guild. This unique adaptation allows it to pump blood at speeds and temperatures that are usually unfeasible. Structures such as these could only ever develop in the nutrient-rich abundance of a place like Funron.
Oh my
The result
god.
of this is an extremely powerful body that can crush enemies with ease. It's
Like, when they come up with new monsters, do they not even hire, like character designers? They just call in scientists. They just call in OIRMs and biologists to be like, well, actually, we would have to have a creature whose vascular properties across the surface allow it to move at a higher speed. Yes, yes.
only weakness is that due to its size, the Molten Tigrex is slower than its cousins. But this wyvern really does not need to rely on speed. Not when it has
Oh,
a
they're actually
secret
an
weapon,
ecology OIRM.
unlike anything
It
seen
shows
in the
they're
other
really into
Tigrex
it. I wouldn't
species.
be surprised if that's just their
The
main
red
job.
skin of the Molten Tigrex constantly regenerates and, as a result of high body temperatures and violent motions, keratinizes and cracks rapidly. Due to this, the skin keeps falling off in the form of small flakes that float in the air for a while. These flakes,
Think of a
once fully
Tigrex bug.
dried, are highly flammable and explosive. As the Tigrex hunts and fights, a cloud of this explosive skin dust gathers around it until the wyvern makes its decisive move. The claws of the Molten Tigrex are similar in composition to massive flints, and can produce sparks when scraped against rock. So, by
So?
strategically creating an ignition spark near its target by clawing at the ground, the wyvern can detonate the explosive dust and rip its victim to shreds violently. These explosions are powerful and also self-sustaining in a sense. The fine debris and rock material that is catapulted into the air during the detonation can fuse back onto the skin of the Molten Tigrex, thus aiding in
I just like how much
keratinization and maintaining the production of the explosive skin flakes.
he
Beyond this
inflected
unique
that.
ability, the Molten Tigrex fights the same as its cousins, charging and clawing at enemies until they are destroyed. Curiously, its roars rival those of the Brute Tigrex, despite it not having any specialized enhancements of the Viosonic system. This is probably due to the Molten Tigrex's enormous lung capacity, allowing it to expel so much compressed air at once that it achieves the same destructive effect. Additionally, the Molten Tigrex can roar at that level of power in quick succession. Very rarely, an opponent will pressure a Molten Tigrex enough for it to fly into the
It's a
same
dev
enraged
oversight.
state seen in the other Tigrex species. It functions identically. Enlarged blood vessels that shine through the skin, increased power, and fierce aggression.
Usually we call those features, but we'll never know.
What makes the Molten Tigrex special, however, is that it can, if necessary, go even further beyond in its wrath.
No way he actually said that.
By overcharging its blast heart and pushing it to its absolute limits, the Molten Tigrex can enter a second state of rage with much more drastic effects. Its muscles are enlarged to their breaking point, and the speed of the creature is enhanced massively. In fact, in this state, the previously sluggish Molten Tigrex becomes the fastest member of its genus, outrunning any other recorded Tigrex specimen. A Molten Tigrex that's been pushed to this is extremely dangerous, as its unparalleled strength is now combined with unparalleled speed. But this ability is also very risky for the wyvern.
It takes a huge toll.
The blast heart, in its neutral state, is already operating at levels of performance that are usually impossible for living beings. Pushing it this far beyond that point may grant enormous power, but the strain on the organ is equally significant.
I don't know. I think I'm kind of like this hunter right here that's getting rolled by this giant Tigrex, while the narrator is explaining his rage mode like it's a villain revealing his power. It's like, it highly increases my speed and power, but it puts a lot of strain on my body. It doesn't matter though, because for you, I'm ready to do anything.
The Molten
Hell
Tigrex
yeah.
risks outright bursting its own heart apart every second it spends in this
My
state.
heart could burst at
and
any
so,
moment.
it will use it sparingly and deactivate it again as
I have
soon
D&D
as
as well.
possible. With this triplet of species, the Tigrex genus is a buffet of possible research topics. Each one can tell us more about the past that the wyvern rex lived in, the dynamics of migratory behavior, and the limits of adaptability. But somehow, this
Well,
was still not all that this
don't
branch
tell
could
me there's
offer
more.
the guild. Because Tigrex
My cursed
are
power's
also
going
affected
wild.
by
The
deviance,
beast is
the
outside.
phenomena by which individual monsters are distorted, altered, and empowered through specific conditions. And back when the phenomenon was being first investigated, one deviant that was found at the time was the Grimclaw Tigrex. This
Holy.
massive deviant can easily be identified.
You know, I can't take this seriously when I look at the little sprite art. He just looks like a little guy. Look at him.
By its increased body size and enlarged blue
The
colored
small
forelimbs,
badge.
with the coloration also appearing on the wyvern's face. Like with most deviants, what exactly causes the emergence of a Grimclaw Tigrex is currently unknown, but a few educated guesses are possible. Its gigantism might imply that it, similarly to the Molten Tigrex, had its dormant giant gene reactivated, not through natural selection, but through individual mutation or perhaps another process altogether. Since deviants are so rare, however, it has not been possible to sufficiently test this hypothesis.
Every time I hear
Whatever the
deviants, I
reason,
keep on
the
thinking about.
reality is that the Grimclaw Tigrex is huge and extremely
What was
dangerous.
that one game?
Its entire
Detroit Become
circulatory
Human.
system is powered up, with thick blood vessels that transport oxygenated blood efficiently and rapidly. The blue discoloration of the shell seems to be most intense
Yes,
where the blood vessels
that
get
too.
closest to the surface of the skin, but the exact relevance of that correlation
Come on,
has
tell
not
me
yet
there's
been
not at
determined.
least a Monster
What
Hunter
is
persona on
clear is
DeviantArt
that
right
these
now.
thick forearms are extremely
100%
destructive.
there is.
The Grimclaw
100%
Tigrex is
somebody
able
has
to
a
crack
Tigrex
the
persona.
very earth with ease, and
And
can
it's
punch the
rainbow
ground
colored.
so hard that the resulting pressure causes subsequent subterranean explosions.
And I'm sure
It can also launch
that when they talk
enormous
about their
boulders without
abilities,
much trouble at all.
they talk about it just like this.
But again, much about the Grimclaw Tigrex remains a mystery. The chance of any deviant emerging is about 1 in every 1 million regular monsters.
Are they
And
got
once
something
one has
edgy
been
like Grimclaw
identified,
or something?
they are to be immediately slain by special permit quests, before they can cause any significant destruction. Research does not tend to be the priority in those cases. The genus Tigrex is a testament to the sheer density of life. On any complete evolutionary tree, it is a single, small branch that does not stick
Thanks,
out
I
visibly.
hate it.
And yet, in this one corner of life, we can study the distant past, the dormant power of genetics, the volatility of evolution, the mystery of individual deviance, and much more. It is a reminder to be thorough and to remain endlessly curious, even in the face of primordial ferocity.
Yes, my favorite part. Let's go.
All of us are prone
Awaken, you lazy piece of junk. She dramatically yells as she kicks the heap of scrap under her feet.
to prejudice.
Oh, apex wolf. Well, they were talking about how there were no apex predators. We have one right here. Let's go. What about more
The
angry?
desire to categorize
And
the world
welcome to our
in
monster
order to
ecology.
predict outcomes is quite natural, but it must nonetheless be managed carefully. The hunters of the guild are no exception. Many of them enlist wanting to hunt and encounter monsters.
You came in
an
just in time for
abstract
the best
sense.
chapter, I'm sure.
But if you were to ask these greenhorns what kind of monster they have in mind, nearly all of them would describe some kind of wyvern. For a long time,
No, I
even
would
among the general
describe
populace, the
monkey.
word monster was intrinsically bound to wyverns. The image of a vaguely reptilian creature is vaguely conjured, and so there was a tendency to assume that this is all there was to the world of monsters. Nothing could be further from the truth. One of our world's greatest gifts is the immense biodiversity that surrounds us, and that includes monster kind. They come in all shapes and sizes, many not being wyverns at all. One clade that exemplifies this is Pelagusia. This order includes all but 2 of the monsters known as fanged beasts, defined by their mammalian body structure and lifestyle. You'd be hard-pressed to find any creature in this group that could even remotely be called a wyvern. Organized into 3 suborders, the 12 genuses of fanged beast contained in Pelagusia stand as reminders that monsters can take on many different appearances.
Yeah, this is the best chapter.
The story of fanged beast research begins in the suborder Morbumata, colloquially called hard-teeth beasts.
Pelagusia.
This group contains the 2 earliest discovered fanged beasts, originally described by the scriveners of Dundorma.
I'm really learning.
One of these beasts lives exclusively in tropical zones.
I'm ready to finish this video, and it's like, what did you learn?
In the jungles of the Terosu region, in the far east of the central continent. Most adventurers and researchers are sure to smell this one before spotting it. For the Conga are well known for their olfactory mischief. These ape-like fanged beasts are easily identifiable by their bright pink fur, which transitions into a messy tuft of green hair at the top of their heads. They have wide, bulbous snouts with a hardened upper lip and blunt teeth that protrude out of the mouth. If you spot one Conga, you are likely to spot a few more soon enough. For these beasts are quite social and live in large groups. Their highly decorated bodies are believed to be used as means of social communication,
in a good
with
way,
the
or
exact shade of pink on the body serving as a sort of identifier. Despite living in groups and wearing many social markers, Conga don't actually cooperate with their peers much. Individual Congas mostly tend to themselves and simply congregate with others as a matter of protection, safety in numbers. The true passion of all Congas is food. They are omnivores and will eat just about anything. Due to their immense appetite, they are constantly eating. Their preferred source of food is mushrooms, which grow in abundance across their native jungles. As a result of this constant feeding, Conga produce large quantities of gas in their body, which they regularly expel as flatulence. This also functions as a defensive measure.
Why is this a status
Conga gas is rancid, of an odor so foul that it repels many monsters instantly. Its effects are especially pronounced in humans. Besides just smelling terrible, Conga gas causes massive swelling and irritation in the throat, making drinking and eating impossible. This is additionally problematic for hunters, who rely on imbibing potions and elixirs to perform their work. For a long time, getting sprayed by a Conga was a massive problem with dire consequences, since the stench cannot be washed away by regular means, such as water or soap. Luckily, the guild was able to develop a specialized deodorant that can rapidly neutralize the gas.
Yeah,
Conga are quite aware of the devastating effects of their gas.
Are they like this when the
it is the best weapon they have.
Farts?
While their long claws are sharp and their arms strong, Conga stand no real chance in a prolonged fight against most adversaries they may encounter in the jungle. So, a big part of their defensive measures is to perform a threat display. When they sense danger,
you can't use items if it farts on you. I wouldn't drink down that Conga gas either.
And shake their abdomen rapidly.
They
This
T-pose
serves
on
to
you?
both make themselves look larger
The amount of
and
people
to
want to
show
come.
off their
No
long claws
way.
and swollen, gas-filled potbellies.
Please, no.
It's an effective display, but not
It's not
foolproof.
willingly.
When danger
I
looms
suppose
and
so.
refuses to back down, the
Blah.
conga may defer the matter to their pack leader.
I like how we
These
got VOD
large
done
alpha
instead.
individuals are called congalala and are
Congalala.
significantly more powerful than their smaller brothers. They are usually around twice the size of a conga, with
Wait,
a larger
Palico
belly,
POV, can
more
actually play as
developed
them?
tail, and longer claws. A striking
I didn't know you
difference
can play
between
as
this
Cass.
alpha and its underlings is the pointed hair cone that adorns the congalala's head. This is not a naturally formed body structure, but instead part of the conga's dominance ritual. When a conga has grown large enough to potentially become a congalala, it must first announce its claim to authority to the rest of the group. It does so by collecting sticky juices from fruits and plants that it likes the smell of. Using these sticky juices, the conga styles its messy hair into a straight, pointed cone, which immediately signals its intentions to the rest of the pack. Rarely, this is all there
I
is
love
to
how
it,
they actually
and the
make
conga experiences a
hairstyles
hormonal rush
and
of
mohawks.
dominant satisfaction that completes
Like
its
some
transition
NES Donkey
into
Kong
a
villain.
congalala. What happens more commonly, however, is that the pack either already has a dominant congalala, or that multiple congas announce their claim to authority at around the same time. In these cases, a battle for dominance ensues, where the victor enshrines their authority while the loser is disgraced and, in some cases, even exiled from the group. Not that this authority amounts to much, mind you. Conga are fundamentally uncooperative creatures, and so, a congalala doesn't actually have that much control over its pack. Rather, its position is a simple one. It protects the group with its size and strength, and in return has the exclusive right to mate and mark the group's territory with its dung. Aside from that, it acts very similarly to a regular conga, spending most of its days foraging for food.
Yeah, we can't
Perhaps
have
due
these
to its large
in the
size,
wilds
the
anymore.
congalala has a much more voracious appetite than its small brothers.
Why is it here?
And is even more food motivated. They too love mushrooms, and, curiously, seem to have a taste for toxic mushrooms specifically. Analysis of congalala stomachs has found that they possess specialized enzymes that can neutralize many weaker toxins, making them harmless for consumption. So, it is possible that toxic
Yeah, that's why it's
mushrooms
so
taste better
spicy.
because of the slight sting of the neutralized poison,
Uh-huh.
not unlike
Okay,
how
now
humans
I
enjoy
can see
spicy
why
food.
whether
However, these
hunters can't
enzymes
drink
can
anymore
only
or
do
eat.
so much, and are useless at protecting the beast from stronger poisons, or those mixed into other food sources such as meat.
It's
In an
actually pink though.
astounding testament to its
Good
extreme
now.
appetite,
Pink
congalala
and green?
are known to continue eating even if they realize that their meal is too poisonous for them to handle. This appetite is also usually the impetus for any trouble
Yo.
the congalala causes for the guild. It
Holy!
is a highly curious
I
creature
didn't know they were in real
that will
life too.
investigate any new stimulus immediately, hoping for it to be related to mushrooms. It seems to be especially attracted by smells
Damn.
that humans consider disgusting, such as manure, which is a problem for any farming operations out in the jungle frontier. And if a congalala spots a delicious mushroom near or in a human settlement, it will ravage the place trying to get to it. It is this tendency that most often lands the congalala in conflict
Okay, I'm
with
so
other
thankful nobody
monsters
typed in
and
sniff after
with
that one.
humans. Luckily for it, the offensive capabilities of the congalala are significantly more developed compared to the conga. It will still perform its threat display and attempt to avoid fighting if possible, but that seems to be mostly about not wasting time fighting that could otherwise be spent eating mushrooms. Its primary weapon remains its gas. Being larger and having an increased food intake, the Congalala possesses a more sophisticated gas production system. Not only does it produce more, it can also produce various types,
Or they can explain why
based on what it has
these ones
eaten
are pink.
recently. Different kinds of mushrooms can turn its gases outright toxic or even flammable. The Congalala uses its intelligence to make the most out of the gases it currently has at its disposal, and is even able to expel them from its mouth, as well as from its rectum. This ability even produces some
No, not
regional
the
variation.
rectum.
Since the type of gas is based on
Like how
diet,
Tealstras has
Congalala that
detail.
live in different areas have slightly different abilities
Yeah, I don't know
based
about
on the specific
intelligence.
mushrooms that grow in their domain.
I think they have a flowchart
But
in their
it's
mind
not
too, like
just up to
the
chance.
bullfangos.
The clever Congalala can also alter the nature of its gas intentionally during or before a fight by eating specific mushrooms. In service of that, the Congalala has found an exceptionally smart use of its tail. This limb is highly prehensile and ends in a folded tip of non-slip skin that is able to reliably grab and hold objects. The tail
that
is
tail is coming
essentially the
off.
Congalala's third arm, and it often uses it to hold trinkets or food items. Most of the time, however, the tail hand is occupied with holding onto an emergency mushroom, which can be snacked on to quickly enhance or alter the power of the beast's gas.
Yo, friendly fire, chill.
This is not just a fascinating display of planning and forethought, but an opportunity to observe how the Congalala actually eats. Food is moved to the mouth with the tail, and is then eaten using the mouth and hands. The blunt teeth of the Congalala are tough and can crush most food easily, but they are unable to cut and bite through leathery or elastic material. For that, the Congalala's upper lip has developed into a hardened edge that can be used as a scissor, breaking up even the most stubborn food items. Besides its gas, the Congalala uses its physicality for combat as well. Its long claws are deadly, and its heavy body can cause serious damage on impact. It can also inflate its belly for a short while,
Why does
allowing it to
its nose
block
look like the
incoming
skull
attacks
emoji?
with its hardened abdomen. However, it isn't the kind of monster that enjoys prolonged fights, and will repeat its threat display periodically
No, that's
to
part of its
try
threat
and
display.
dissuade
Don't
its
worry
enemy.
about it.
If a fight grows particularly dire, the Congalala's face and buttocks will flush red with blood to further intimidate its foe. As a monster, it's strong enough to defend itself, but it would much rather get back to eating mushrooms. Conga and Congalala were the first fanged beasts to be introduced into the guild record properly, after a small village in the east named Jumbo compiled the
Jumbo?
records and petitioned for their inclusion. The villagers had long since known
Wait
of the
till you hear
Conga
about
that
Mumbo.
prowled the nearby jungles, but it took some time to have them formally inducted into the guild's body of knowledge. It was worth it, however. Now the guild scriveners could not just officially study the creatures, but they would also compile hunting guides and dossiers to aid hunters when encountering
Dossier?
Conga and Congalala. One insight that came of this was that Conga are actually quite unlikely to chase down retreating enemies. Their priority, after all, is to keep eating. So, if a Conga or Congalala turns its back on you, run, became guild wisdom, and likely saved many a hunter's bacon. Another effect of this induction was a general re-evaluation of monster kind, to see if any previously discovered species could fit into the newly created fanged beast category. This is how Bullfango and Bulldrome were reclassified as fanged beasts, as they were previously considered lesser herbivores. Once part of the official guild record, Congalala were studied in earnest, and many wondrous insights were gained. But this also made it prone to the same controversial decisions that were so common in that era of the guild. Specifically, this was a time when the Hunters Guild was especially interested in the study of subspecies, and was quick to assign the label to any different-looking individual of a known monster species. There are many infamous examples, but a lesser-known case is that of the emerald congalala.
Oh, I thought they were going to talk about
in
it
many
finally.
ways fulfills all the telltale signs of a subspecies. It visually resembles the previously known congalala species in all aspects except its fur coloration, which is green instead of pink.
Then let me do
It
good
is
night.
generally
Catch you in the
more
morning.
aggressive and
I'll
powerful
catch
than
you in
the
the
common
morning when we're
species,
still watching
but it
this.
otherwise resembles it greatly.
Good night, Danny.
At first glance, the emerald congalala appears to be a classic case of a separate subspecies. At closer inspection, however, this hypothesis fell apart. For one, the emerald congalala shares a habitat with the pink congalala. This by itself is not a deal breaker, as subspecies sharing the same home does happen, but it does raise some
I'll
eyebrows
let the bed
at
bug bites
least.
or whatever. I'll
This
try
is
not to.
compounded by the lack of emerald congas. No green conga have ever been sighted. How could the emerald congalala then be a true subspecies if none of its young and beta counterparts seem to exist? As more research surfaced, it became
Are you
apparent
getting
that the
gaslit right now
congalala
by me?
was in fact a misclassified variant, not genetically distinct from the pink species, but rather the result of changes to an individual. Emerald
Ross,
congalala
yo,
are actually
stop.
elderly
Stop.
congalala who have held the position of alpha for many years and are entering old age. The green fur is actually not naturally that color. Aging congalala turn white as their fur loses its pigmentation, similarly to the hair of humans. Old congalala will then cover themselves in crushed plants and juices, which is what gives their fur its green appearance. Why they do this is unclear. Perhaps white fur is seen as shameful in Conga culture, or maybe the old ape understands
As if these
that green
savages even
makes for
have
good
the
camouflage in the
concept of
jungle.
culture.
Either way, the emerald congalala must maintain its coloration by regularly covering itself in plant substances. Tempered by age, the emerald congalala is by all accounts a stronger, more impressive congalala. It could not have stayed an alpha for this long without some serious skills, after all. Emerald congalalas have an increased appetite, which in turn leads to more powerful gases. These can be expelled with superior force, and are known to be even more devastating than those of regular individuals. Their muscles are hardened by years of dominance, and their fur is rigid and solid from all the plant matter mixed into it. The result is a more resistant, stronger congalala that can really pack a punch. Luckily, age has also wizened the congalala, and while it will defend itself and its pack fiercely, it also uses its experience to
I don't
avoid
think she's
conflicts
actually
in the
been
first
sprayed by
place.
congalala before.
That is
to know
why
what she's
emerald
talking about.
congalala generally have fewer interactions with humans than pink congalala. For their part, humanity has greatly benefited from the discovery of the emerald congalala. Intense research
Yeah,
has
she
yielded a
doesn't
way
know.
to chemically reproduce emerald
doesn't know.
congalala gas using materials harvested from the beast itself. This gas is considered a high-quality fuel for airships and is traded at high
What?
prices. In the
They use the
halls of the
gas
guild,
for gas?
meanwhile,
I
many
mean, I guess that
scholars
makes sense,
still
but
push for the
really?
emerald congalala to be
All that
reclassified
fossil
as
fuel?
a variant, and for guild textbooks to be corrected, as is the case with the other examples of this specific unfortunate trend in guild history. While the Conga rule the jungles of Terosu, their close relatives stalk a very different kind of world. Far north
listening.
from Terosu lies Furahia, a frigid region defined by cold air and snowy mountains. It is a barren land where the guild's presence is limited to the village of Poke up in the northeast.
Pokey! Again!
Looking at the landscape, it may be hard to imagine life thriving here. And yet, these mountains are the kingdom of a truly fascinating species of flying beast, The Blango. Like the Conga, Blango are ape-like fanged beasts that live in packs. But is where the similarities already
Bit
end.
crunch. Wait, did that fix it?
Blango exclusively live in cold regions and are covered in
nice.
thick white fur that has
Classic
developed to
crunch.
repel the freezing temperatures.
Thank you.
This fur also aids in camouflage among the snow. Blango are entirely carnivorous
Yay!
and must, as a result,
only it
rely
actually stays
heavily on
forever.
hunting. That is where they differ the
I thought we were
strongest
gonna
from
die
the
for a
Conga.
moment.
Blango packs are not independent individuals that merely hang around each other for convenience. Instead, they are highly social, tight-knit communities
Imagine if our
that
stream went
cooperate
blank
flawlessly
during the
and
Blanco.
display complete loyalty to each other. When tasked with finding meat in the tundra, everyone has to pull their weight. This social lifestyle is then centralized around the Blango's very own
Social
alpha pack
lifestyle.
leader, the
This is why I could-
Blangonga.
This I could never
This
be.
large beast is the result of a male Blango undergoing a hormonal rush during its growth. What exactly determines which Blango experience this and which don't is unknown, but every Blango pack will always be led by a Blangonga. Its authority is absolute, signaled by its large and deadly tusks. Their large beards are a sign of both wisdom and maturity, and they inform its nickname, Snow Lion. It rules the pack, but it also takes care of it. The Blangonga coordinates where the pack moves to next, when and what to hunt, and even ensures safe sleeping conditions for its brethren. Blango packs have been observed sleeping all huddled together around their pack leader,
See?
using the large
When we go back to
Blangonga's
Monkey
body
Mondays,
heat to stay
the
warm
Nikon Kingdom
while
is gonna get
asleep.
described just like this.
But by far the Blangonga's most impressive performance as leader is displayed during the hunt. The strategy this species employs has awed researchers for a long time, after all. First, the Blangonga scouts out the area and a potential target. It then, using soft and tender vocalizations, instructs some of its kin to go to a predetermined location and burrow under the snow, such that they are nearly invisible. The remaining Blango then follow their leader into battle, where they carefully and strategically chase their prey to the same place their brothers are hiding. With a roar, the Blangonga signals the hidden Blango to reveal themselves, leaving the prey surrounded and defenseless. The pack then brutally pummels the target, pelting it with snowballs and slashing it with their nails. The Blangonga then uses its tusks for the killing blow, with such deliberate precision that it almost resembles a sacred ritual. This hunting strategy is extremely successful, and it is the main reason Blango are able to thrive in such harsh conditions.
You know, maybe the
The
Blanco are okay.
Blangonga is also in charge of enforcing the pack's territory. It
And they
marks
don't
it
fart
by
at you?
burying its dung in the snow, sending a warning to all trespassers not to intrude.
Wait, they put it
Should
in the
a
snow
Blangonga
so you'll
notice
step
a
on it?
disturbance in its
Be like,
territory,
what is
it
this?
will not hesitate to
It's a
mobilize the
warning.
entire troop to investigate and retaliate. This becomes especially dramatic when the intruder in question is another Blango pack with its own Blangonga. Should two packs ever meet, they will instantly engage in a bloody conflict.
Oh no way.
These are turf wars in the most literal sense,
Like gang wars?
with wide-ranging battles that include sophisticated strategies, retreats, pincer attacks, and the like. These wars are so intense that they quite often threaten to spill into nearby settlements, which will be left
It
in
has
ruin
lunges?
if the conflict
Oh.
moves there. This is in fact
I would've
the
just
most
thought
common
it just threw rocks
scenario
at you or
in
something.
which
That's
a
scary.
Blangonga hunt is organized by the guild. Not that those hunts are easy by any means. Facing a pack of Blango to try and slay their leader is a daunting task, made even harder by the fact that the pack will use their hunting methods against humans as well. Even if one manages to separate a Blangonga from its pack, one must still face the might of the snow lion. Despite its
when he
one
said that,
must still face the
he must still face the might, and then this thing comes into the screen. I thought he was gonna say the Vespoid.
might of the snow lion. Despite its considerable size, the Blangonga is fast and agile, able to outmaneuver any human, especially in the snow. Its arms are muscular, able to throw punches that can break bones with ease. Its sharp claws leave nasty gashes, and, of course, its tusks are a death sentence. Even at range, the Blangonga has options. Like its smaller brothers, it can throw snowballs with surprising force, both harming foes as well as lowering their body temperature. At mid-distance, the Blangonga can even expel cold air from its lungs for a freezing blast that can disorient and slow down its enemies. And should an opponent get a lucky hit in on the beast, they may find themselves shocked. The fur of the Blangonga may look like soft hair, but it is actually thick and rigid, similar in consistency and function to chainmail armor. So the beast sports excellent offense and defense. But the Blangonga's most terrifying ability is its intelligence. It displays many unique behaviors accredited to a near human-like degree of intelligence. It can create new, sophisticated strategies on the fly and adapt to whatever humans throw at it. Some Blangonga have attacked supply routes and outposts in what appear to be acts of deliberate sabotage. They have even begun adapting to certain hunter tools. When marked with the scented paintballs that the guild uses for monster tracking, Blangonga will actually try and wash them off as soon as possible, implying that they understand their function to some degree. Moreover, Blangonga seem particularly aggressive towards humans specifically, and will hold long grudges against specific hunters. Many hunters who quit the job point at the Blangonga as the reason why, stating that fighting something with such intelligent eyes was unnerving and uncomfortable. These trends have led to some serious concerns within the guild. If the Blangonga seems so smart and human-like, what ability or strategy might it develop next? Due to this unpredictability, the guild decreed that Blangonga hunts must be kept to a minimum to avoid teaching the monster too much about human weaponry and tool use. While one may see this as a win for the Blangonga, encountering humans isn't without risk for it either. Its tusks are the symbol of its power, and as a result, highly sought after as trophies. Should a Blangonga have its tusks broken, it immediately loses its authority over the pack, the highest possible shame this monster could ever endure. That is why it is probably for the best that humans and Blango do not interact much.
They should put a monster that has starts wielding great swords because it learned and observed.
The Blangonga gained quite the reputation in both guild and civil territories. The fierce snow lion of higher mind and deadly tusk. It soon entered into the imagination of many civilians as just one of the many wonders of the wild frontier. Like with any myth, it eventually began to mutate, with people producing and reproducing many bizarre stories and encounters with the beast that were entirely unhinged from reality. But one story that kept emerging not from children and busybodies, but from merchants and travelers, was that of the desert lion. In all of its forms, this urban legend described an encounter with a lonesome Blangonga out in the desert, far away from the snowy mountains it usually inhabits. This was generally dismissed as just lies for the sake of sensationalism, and even the most credible sources were simply told that the desert sun must have made them hallucinate. Imagine then the shock of the guild when an official special investigation into an unrelated matter in the Dune Desert ran into a desert-dwelling subspecies of Blangonga. Research on it began almost immediately,
what?
and this new species
Maybe in
was
the wilds
quickly dubbed
we might see
Copper
Blangonga.
Blangonga. As the name illustrates, this species of Blangonga sports a dark orange and brown coat of fur, which is much shorter than that of the Furahia species. This coat seems to be specialized to disperse body heat easily and allow for life under the desert sun. Its muscles are slightly enlarged, and it sports reinforced fur armor around its limbs especially. Besides that, it doesn't display many physiological differences to its sister species. The most important difference, however, is that the Copper Blangonga lives a solitary life, which is an extreme deviation from the highly social lifestyle of the Snow Blangonga. In fact, despite the Copper Blangonga at this point being confirmed to be a true subspecies, no Copper Blangos have ever been found. This long sowed doubt over its status as a subspecies until juvenile Copper Blangonga were observed. In Snow Blangos, males may at some point in their life experience a hormonal rush that transforms them into a Blangonga. This same hormonal rush seems to occur in the desert species as well, but in all individuals shortly after birth. Due to what is likely a genetic adaptation, all Copper Blangonga undergo their transformation into an alpha at a very young age, and then live their life in solitude, relying only on their own strength. This also gives us a clue as to how the species developed. Long ago, for some reason, an ancestor species of the Blangonga must have ended up in the desert. Since the small Blango were likely not strong enough to survive, packs quickly died off, while natural selection favored those individuals
For some reason.
who would by chance
I don't
undergo
know.
their alpha
XD shrug is
transformation
what they're saying.
early
I don't
enough
know.
to
It's
be
kind
able
of
to
dead.
brave the deserts. Over time, this created a population of Blangonga that would undergo their transformation with increasing consistency and at an earlier age. But because Alpha Blangonga do not get along by nature, this led to
We had
solitary
XD shrug.
lifestyles, resulting in the Copper Blangonga we know today. It is a truly fascinating example of the adaptability of life. For a time, these two genuses of fanged beasts were considered the two great ape families, ruling over their bespoke habitats with their packs.
There you go.
Research progressed steadily, and all seemed well. However, in the undercurrent of society, in the hushed whispers and trembling stutters of the populace, there lived a third great ape monster.
Wait,
One
is
that
it?
soon became even more ingrained in urban myth and folklore than the Blangonga.
I'm awake.
The guild was generally dismissive of these rumors, for they were absurdly inconsistent. Some said that this mystery ape was a jet-black ball of pure muscle, while others described a near heavenly primate with golden wings crackling with
Oh my
thunder.
god.
It, by all accounts, just seemed like the new findings about Blangonga had overwhelmed the imagination of travelers or merchants, and was probably not worth taking seriously. Until, of course, the existence of a third ape monster species was confirmed when a guild patrol on a routine expedition returned mostly in body bags, with their survivors describing the incident in tears. Far out in the remotest mountains, they had spotted it.
Were you carted into a
Moments
body
later,
bag?
It had spotted them.
Monka, why is it
Details of
looking
what
at me?
happened next
What?
are
Get away from me.
redacted, but be that as it may, this incident solidified the existence of the monster that would later come to be known and feared as Rajang.
Rajang.
Between that fateful day and now, Rajang research has only progressed very slowly. They are exceptionally rare, with a global population that is estimated to be minuscule.
Are you
Research
sure? I feel like we
opportunities
find
are
them all the
thus already
time.
scarce, made more dire by the fact that Rajang encounters have a very high fatality rate. Not even survivors of Rajang incidents are able to provide much insight, as many
Your face
outright
when fighting
refuse to
Rajang.
talk about it from the sheer trauma. Ironically, this has given the Rajang a degree of fame, as it is feared and talked about all over the world. It has become well known due to being so unknowable.
Oh, yeah, I mean, he's right. It is being talked about all around the world. I'm talking about it from the US, talking about it from Japan, and wherever else, the EU.
However,
And
thanks to the immense bravery of master hunters and scholars alike, some crucial discoveries about the Rajang have indeed been made. They are nomadic and solitary, traveling from place to place completely alone. This is in stark contrast to the highly social lives of the Kongalala and Blangonga, and as a result, no breeding or social behavior has ever been observed. Appearance-wise, they seem to resemble the Blangonga more so than the Kongalala, as they also sport muscular, nearly human-like arms and hands with nails instead of claws. On its head, it grows two massive twisted horns, which some researchers have argued might be related to sexual dimorphism, with the males having larger, more pronounced horns.
not again.
It is covered in dark brown or black fur, of which some samples have been collected. At closer inspection, this fur coat is quite remarkable. The hairs are tipped with fine, rigid bristles that repel outside air entirely, thus insulating the body from both heat and the cold. Even more interestingly, these bristles are extremely resistant to heat specifically, and can
Glad you could be here
even
too.
repel
We're just
magma
learning
for a
more
short
about
while without
Rajang
melting.
just in time.
This specialized fur is probably instrumental to the Rajang's ability to appear anywhere. And it is this ability that is both the most fascinating and most worrisome aspect of the Rajang. A Rajang will travel far and wide across its life, settling in any possible type of habitat
Wants to
for a
be
short while,
very
and setting up
best.
a temporary territory until it moves on. That territory it defends with full, overwhelming force. It is impossible to overstate just how dominant a Rajang is in nearly every ecosystem it invades. It will attack anything that moves without its permission, and is known to brutally massacre any local apex predators should they fail to recognize their predicament.
Oh no.
It will mark its present territory with tufts of its fur,
Tell Apex
which
Wolf to run.
regrows continuously. These markings are not merely there to delineate the exact size of the territory, they are a warning and a show of dominance. The Rajang has also been observed sleeping out in the open, with its belly exposed,
Yeah, they don't even
usually
care.
considered foolishly careless in nature. In the Rajang's case, however, it is probably part of its dominance display. It rests while openly flaunting its softest body part, as a reminder to all
does that mean you
it
can
has
pet it?
nothing to fear, since none can oppose it. When awake, it is an unstoppable force of ecological oppression, preying on just about anything with nearly flawless success. They seem to technically be omnivores, but their diet has been observed to consist nearly entirely of meat regardless. In the process, the Rajang can annihilate entire ecosystems, not purely through violence, but
Let's be
also
real,
by
I probably
causing
ate those
most
barrel
local
bombs
fauna
before.
to simply flee in terror. This is probably why it is nomadic
Probably
in
feels
the
like a
first place.
massage. It's like,
Any area
waking me
beset
up.
by a Rajang will soon become barren and silent, and so the monster must move on to
Must be
keep
8 a.m.,
itself
huh?
fed. These
Hunters again.
qualities have led the Rajang to be considered in the same vein as a natural disaster, a calamity that can appear out of nowhere and devastate an entire region basically overnight. Due to this, many scholars to this day insist that the Rajang must be reclassified as an elder dragon,
What?
as just like them, it is a walking catastrophe. This idea has
Holy,
taken hold
okay, yeah. I was I think I mentioned this one time. It's like Blood walks up to Kieran's, snacks on their horns? Just for fun. Yeah, I believe it.
In some corners of the guild, Dundorma's Elder Dragon Observation
I've
Center,
never even
for
seen
example,
camellias.
does in fact include the Rajang as one of its observation targets. However, the guild has remained steadfast with its classification of Rajang.
Is it because, actually, it can't be a dragon because it's a monkey?
A core feature of Elder Dragons, administrators argue, is that they seem entirely removed from all other forms of life, and must thus be considered in their own classification. The Rajang, mysterious and outrageous it may be, still displays clear physiological similarities and genetic links to the Kongalala and the Blangonga, and can thus be included into regular monster classifications. Some researchers go even a step further and propose that it might have evolved out of an ancestor of the Blangonga specifically. This hypothesis is based on the physical similarities between the two monsters, as well as the assertion that the Rajang's immense power
It would have been an Elder
may be
Dragon,
extreme
but somebody was
form
like,
of the same
actually, it's
mechanism
kind of like
by
a
which the
Blangonga.
Copper Blangonga became
they're really
stronger
similar, right?
as a result of solitary life.
They're on the
This
same
suggestion
level.
has not been confirmed as of now, though, and is thus merely speculation at this point. The question remains, however, how can a single monster be this destructive and powerful? In some regions, researchers even found brutalized Elder Dragon corpses in the aftermath of a Rajang invasion, with marks that indicated that they had been fed on. What could possibly allow a fanged beast to become such a force of nature? The answer is twofold. For one, the Rajang simply possesses unrivaled physical strength.
Yeah.
Its muscles are unfathomably dense.
Seems about
and
right.
with its flexible and strong arms, it can throw punches that utterly pulverize bone near effortlessly. The nails on its hands are short but sharp and can leave brutal gashes even through thick scale armor. The structure of its hands is also deadly, as they are quite human-like, with a strong opposable thumb that allows it to grab opponents like a wrestler. Once locked inside the Rajang's grip, a victim is likely to be torn apart like old parchment, or crushed like overripe fruit. Its horns can skewer targets, and its hard fangs can chew through most known materials. And defensively, the Rajang is equally well equipped. Its rigid fur protects it from impacts and slashes, and its extremely powerful immune system grants it a general resistance to most naturally occurring poisons. In terms of raw physicality, few monsters can stand up to the Rajang. But this isn't even its primary weapon.
No, I thought he was going to say it's not even its final form.
A truly fascinating, terrible secret. All Rajang are born with a thunder organ, a body structure that is capable of storing, releasing, and controlling electricity. But in juvenile Rajang, this organ is entirely dormant, incapable of being used until a certain moment. Rajang spend their youth developing their physical strength, honing their muscles until they are as powerful as can be. They are not, however, doing this for no reason. They are training.
Are you saying that when we kill regular Rajang, we're just killing juveniles? And that they just spend their days working out? Holy!
Once a Rajang is large and strong enough, probably around the time of sexual
tears off an Elder Dragon's horn,
they embark on a fascinating journey. They set out...
a journey to the west even?
To hunt a Kirin. Hunting an Elder Dragon with this much deliberation and preparation is nearly unheard of in nature, but the Rajang has a distinct purpose in mind. Once a Kirin is found, a brutal fight ensues, both parties battling for supremacy. If the Rajang fails, it simply dies, another victim of the overwhelming power of the Phantom Beast. But should the Rajang's training pay off, it will grapple the Kirin into submission, and break off its horn. It is crucial to the Kirin's ability to call down lightning, and the Rajang will then perform the most daring chapter of this maturity ritual. While the Kirin reels from the loss of its precious horn, the Rajang will consume it, crushing the horn
I
between
don't
its powerful teeth.
I don't think we
The
saw a
mysterious
Rajang
minerals
lose.
that once
2 out of 2 times. First we find a hornless Kirin. And then next we see the Rajang. And what is he doing? Killing another Kirin right in front of our eyes.
powered the
I don't
Kirin's
know if there's
lightning
any
ability
if.
course through the Rajang and
Yeah.
activate its thunder organ, giving the beast full access to its electrical powers, and making it the only fanged beast to
No
date
wonder why Kirin
to
are so
ever
elusive and they keep
master
hiding.
thunder. Once
They're
this
just hiding
power
from this guy.
awakens, there is no going back. The Rajang fully embraces the lightning and becomes near unstoppable. Interestingly, all observed Rajang were noted to have access to their thunder ability. This maturity ritual must thus function as a filter for adulthood, where juveniles either succeed or die. Considering the task, this ritual probably has a high mortality rate, and might even be the cause for the Rajang's rarity. Armed with the ability to generate the thunder element, the Rajang is truly terrifying. From shooting balls of lightning to firing massive beams of pure energy, the beast can use this power to annihilate any opponent. The beam is especially devastating, as it allows the beast to shoot flying wyverns clean out of the sky. Curiously, after
No,
Rajang has awakened its
Tobikadachi!
thunder organ, it seems to prefer prey that has thunder abilities itself. But this is only the beginning. For the thunder organ bestows the Rajang with an even more impressive power, one that is only seen when the beast is challenged. The Rajang's black fur may look uniform, but it actually comes in 2 types.
Actually,
Some of it is just regular hair, but some of the fur, generally that on its back and arms, is actually made up of special hollow hairs. These hollow spaces are filled with a unique substance that reacts violently when exposed to an electrical charge. As the Rajang becomes increasingly enraged and excited, its thunder spreads across its body
Whoa,
until it reaches
excited?
this special fur, which then causes the substance in the hollow hairs to alight with a golden glow, changing the color of the hairs while amplifying the electric charge and empowering the Rajang further. This state is called the beast's war spirit form by the guild, and is when the difference between the 2 fur coats can be seen most starkly. The hollow hairs turn golden, while the
they don't
regular
even call
fur
it
stays black,
it's enraged.
creating a
They had
striped
to give it a
pattern.
special term.
It has been noted that the ratio between thunder fur and regular fur differs between individuals, with older Rajang seemingly having more thunder fur.
We call it the choke
Researchers
slam
predict that in
form.
old age, Rajang might lose their stripes and turn entirely golden when in the war spirit form, as thunder fur overtakes the regular fur across its life. Regardless of the details, this state represents a Rajang at its apex. Thunder crackles around it, and its
Babadum.
power and speed grow exponentially. Very few can survive an onslaught from a war spirit Rajang. The beast can even take it one step further and enter what the guild calls the rampage state.
Oh my god.
By running a current through its arms, the Rajang heats up and hardens its muscles with such intensity that they begin to glow red and emit steam. In this state, the arms of
Each
Rajang
form
are
that you
hard
get
as
to see
steel and
is
become
one
even
cart.
more destructive than before. Their hardness also allows them to be used defensively,
No one's ever seen the
deflecting
4th
attacks
form.
easily. Scholars have commented that this ability seems quite similar to how a Kirin can harden its body by running its lightning through it.
Oh, that's
the war
why.
spirit form does not come without a cost, however.
I was wondering why is
As
this
it is
fucking
tied
horse
to the
so
Rajang's
tough?
level of excitement and stress, it puts a tremendous strain on its body and also consumes an exorbitant amount of energy. It is a weapon that must be managed carefully. To that end, The Rajang has a complex endocrine system that uses hormones to strategically enable and
Actually,
quell
it's
the
pronounced
beast's rage
endocrine.
in accordance with its energy household. One command center of this mechanism, interestingly, sits on the Rajang's tail. This knot of nerves
Yo, why
is
is it like oiled up? What is this? What is this
tasked
view?
with maybe the most crucial task: turn off the War Spirit form and regulate the Rajang's thunder abilities. If a fight is taking too long and the amount of consumed energy is approaching dangerous levels, the command center in the tail will send a signal to release calming hormones that soften the Rajang's rage and ease it out of the War Spirit form. It also limits the power output of the thunder ability, functioning as a protective regulatory organ. In doing so, the tail plays a vital role in protecting the Rajang from exhausting itself fatally in battle. This, however, also makes the tail the Rajang's obvious weak spot.
Yeah, of
When
course.
sufficiently struck or damaged, the tail
It's the weakness. When little they know that Rajang has one more trick up its sleeve. Wait till you see the end to
command
find
center
out what
will
that
react
is.
by causing a spinal reflex, which instantly forces the Rajang out of this War Spirit form as a defense mechanism. And should the tail be entirely destroyed, it would have devastating consequences for the Rajang's physical and mental health. Even with this potential weakness, however, the Rajang is extremely
Rajang.
dangerous. One aspect of its threat that is, as of now, entirely unclear is its intelligence. With how few reliable observations exist of the creature in the first place, very little research has been conducted into just how smart this monster is. But considering its close relation to Kongalala and especially Blangonga, it seems reasonable to expect it to be fairly intelligent. This is corroborated by some very concerning reports by hunters. Many have witnessed the Rajang avoiding or deliberately destroying man-made traps, and the New World Research Commission has observed in horror as it circumvented various hunting tools, including the clutch claw. Due to the possibility of even more complex intelligence than the Blangonga, as well as every other dangerous facet of the creature, Rajang hunts are some of the most scrutinized and meticulously planned quests the guild undertakes, and none but the most accomplished hunters are ever sent out into the field for them. Many mysteries still surround the Rajang, especially since its official discovery has forced the guild scholars to revisit every report and sighting that they had previously dismissed. If the sightings of the Rajang were real, then maybe some of the reports that they had initially thought were bogus might include details that could further enhance our understanding of the creature. Some of these reports could be resolved, but others were much harder to square with reality.
It's okay, you got to observe all three forms, right?
One example that long puzzled the guild was that of the Rajang's color. While it is now known that the Rajang's fur can switch between black and gold, there were a number of sightings that claimed to have seen it in its golden war spirit form from afar, as it was simply walking by. This seemed unusual. The war spirit form was a dangerous, energy-sapping weapon reserved for combat, so why would a Rajang simply leave it active while it wasn't fighting? Another bizarre observation that cropped up too often to ignore was that of the Rajang having golden wings.
What?
While the Rajang is still rarely observed officially, everyone generally agrees that it does not, in fact, have wings. So how could multiple eyewitnesses—
cockroach theory once again, you know, it's worse than one that flies—
independently hallucinate it having them? These clues seemed impossible to resolve until hunters encountered its originator, a Rajang variant, classified under the name Furious Rajang. Like all variants, the Furious Rajang is not a different species of Rajang, but merely an individual that has undergone a specific, non-genetic change.
I wouldn't be surprised
In this case,
if that's what they
the
saw,
Furious
but how
Rajang
fast
is
it
a
goes.
Rajang that has become permanently stuck in its war spirit form. Its fur is perpetually golden, and the thunder element courses through its body freely. This explains the reports of a golden Rajang wandering around. As for the reason why its war spirit form is constantly active, that is harder to understand. A key observation regarding this is that every furious Rajang that the guild has cited had a broken, mutilated, or even entirely missing tail.
Is it really a weakness or a power limiter? Which one is it? I don't think it's either of them. It was just holding it back from its potential.
Based on this, the common hypothesis is that when the tail is lost or heavily damaged, the endocrine command node in it ceases to function, disrupting the hormonal flow in the body. It is believed that this usually disables the Rajang for life and leads to an early death. But in some cases, it appears that the result is instead more destructive. A Rajang that is completely overloaded with stress and anger, burdened with a dysfunctional hormonal cycle that has it in a perpetual state of rage, leading to a continuous surge of electrical power as it remains locked in its war spirit form. Wrath incarnate, a power unleashed. That is the furious Rajang. As to how the tail is lost and destroyed, there are generally two theories, both of which could be true simultaneously and simply vary by individual. In some cases, the Rajang was probably just injured in battle, leading to the loss of the tail at the hands of a powerful opponent. What kind of enemy could so seriously maim a Rajang is something few researchers want to think about. The second possibility...
They're not claiming any responsibility for letting Furious Rajang exist. I mean, I guess that's true, to be honest. I'm not even gonna pretend on that one, she's just right.
is somehow even more disturbing. It could be that some Rajang become, at some point, aware of how their tail limits their powers. These individuals, perhaps addicted to the rush of battle, might then choose to rip off their own tails to unleash their full potential, an explanation that is supported by the wounds found at the tail base of some furious Rajang. Either way, it is by all accounts a delirious creature, driven mad by the constant flow of thunder and hormones. Its rage is so absolute that it seems to nearly entirely forgo eating and hunting. The furious Rajang instead fights purely for violence sake, and will assault anything that moves regardless of its edibility. Anything and everything can become a target of its rage, including elder dragons, which have been observed being brutalized by the mad ape king. The furious Rajang boasts power that dwarfs that of the regular Rajang, especially in regards to its thunder ability. Not only can it create larger beams and multiple thunderbolts, it can also directly discharge an electric current through its fingers. The furious Rajang uses this new ability to force an explosive current into the ground, detonating its targets from below. The same current can empower its muscles even further, allowing the furious Rajang to perform unbelievable feats of physical strength, such as ripping entire chunks of the earth beneath it out from the ground and launching them as boulders. Some furious Rajang have also been witnessed using their body current to accelerate themselves violently, turning their body into a spiraling death missile for a short time. The furious Rajang's abilities are tied to its emotions, so the angrier and more excited the creature becomes, the more its power surges, with no tail to hold it back. While it is always enveloped in rage, it is possible, if perhaps not advisable, to push the creature even further. Once its ire reaches a zenith, the furious Rajang enters a second, more advanced stage of the war spirit form, one that is entirely unseen in regular Rajang. Its thunder enshrouds its body fully, jumping and crackling freely in its mane. The hair on its
Imagine
back
that.
stands up in two distinct triangular tufts, vaguely resembling small wings, the likely origin of the golden wing testimonials. In this form, the furious Rajang simply has no equal, as its
Yeah,
body and thunder
with the
become
great sword.
unspeakably powerful, able to annihilate enemies near instantly. Even more
It
troubling,
actually has
since
4
the furious
forms.
Rajang
No
has no
way.
tail, there is no obvious weak spot that challengers and hunters can
It has
aim
no
for to
weakness, seems
disable the
about right to me.
transformation. One insight, however, has been gleaned from the scattered reports. Sufficient injury and trauma to the head of the beast will in fact force it to turn off this enhanced war spirit form. Researchers see
I
this
think
as
you
an
could say the
indication
same thing
that
to a
this
lot of
state
living
must be
beings.
maintained consciously through active concentration, but no official conclusions have been reached so far. Even with the rarity of its confirmed sightings, the furious Rajang has gained a fierce reputation even among the
Yep,
civilian population, especially related to the myth of its
yep.
golden wings.
That's the exact experience
The
I had.
populace fears
Thinking
the
I could
furious
face
Rajang like
Furious
a
Rajang, and then it
specter,
did the
a
laser move, and I
demon
was
that could
dead.
descend onto them at any moment.
And yeah, I'm sure they would
The
turn out
guild,
to,
however,
yeah,
is quick
if
to
they were
reiterate
transformed.
that the reality
Well,
is
that's gone too.
somewhat different. While the furious Rajang is indeed
Well, what's its weakness? I don't know. Maybe hit it in the head hard enough, it'll stop.
a powerful, deadly creature,
You needed a
the
scientist for
tangible
that?
threat it poses to civilization and civilized regions as a whole is actually
Thank you
quite
for joining
minor.
the murder.
Like the regular Rajang, it is extremely rare and
We're
mostly
really
sticks
learning.
to the
Make them
remotest
even more
areas
angry.
of the frontier.
What I don't understand is why don't they just leave them alone and let themselves tire out? Because they said that they stop eating, right? They just go on a constant rampage. Just let them go. Let them do their thing
Moreover,
until they
while its
pass out.
thunderous ability is immense, it is likely also its downfall. The tail's regulatory function was a protective mechanism, and without it, it's likely that the furious Rajang is consuming its own energy at a deadly rate.
Yeah, see?
Add to that the fact that it seems to prioritize combat over hunting and feeding, and it is easy to conclude that furious Rajang do not live long lives. So it is unlikely that one would live long enough to cause any real problems near populated areas.
They don't live long, so are they like I mean, these things don't even feed themselves, but can you go kill the furious Rajang real quick? I needed to make I don't know, a pasta recipe. I need his hairs for my pasta.
If there was one lesson that the Hunters Guild learned during the so-called second generation of its research, it was to
Can you make
never
it die
discredit
faster? I'm
rumors
sure
and
you can
legends
handle it,
outright.
right?
Between the
You can do
once-in-a-lifetime
it.
finds,
You
like the
fought a
molten
Rajang
Tigrex,
before.
or terrifying encounters such as the Rajang, it had become obvious that it simply could not afford not to investigate niche and unscientific reports. Not in a world filled with so much wonder. The ears of culture and history are often more attuned to the truth than the rigid march of guild bureaucracy, after all. In the wake of this lesson, the guild thus began reaching out actively to various communities, both in and outside civilized regions, to record their stories and myths, and use them to enhance its own understanding of the natural world and of monster kind. As far as the Old World continent is concerned, there is no better place to hear legends than Furahia. The biting cold and harsh
So
landscape
much happens
creates
up there in
tight-knit,
the
isolated
north.
communities, which in turn create elaborate and
In Pookie
well-preserved
Village, it's
folklore
specific.
as they huddle together and keep their cultures alive around the warmth of the fireplace. One myth that quickly caught the attention of guild scribes was that of the wyvern gods. Relate in the traditional old language of Furahia, it tells of gods that reign supreme over the lands, whose breaths are hurricanes and whose steps are earthquakes. They appear in these tales as challenges that local communities must band together to oppose and appease, as they will otherwise trample and crush all they hold dear. There are even some differing versions of the myth. Some imagine these wyvern gods as tough but loving mentors, whose threat is a deliberate test of Furahian unity. Other
That is
versions
some
of the myth
insane
are
cope.
explicitly apocalyptic, stating that the battle between the wyvern gods will be one that ends the world. Generally, these wyvern gods were interpreted by both the locals and guild investigators as metaphorical. Their strength and oppressiveness were signifiers of nature, an element that northern religions would naturally depict this way to impress upon its people the urgency of survival in such harsh conditions. But some of the myth's detailed descriptions of the wyvern gods and their bodies piqued the guild's interest enough to keep an eye or two on the region. Ironically, however, their first breakthrough in this case did not happen in Furahia, but instead in Irude, the volcanic peninsula in the central south of the continent. Out of nowhere, a massive black monster appeared and began rampaging across the region. Irude isn't densely populated, but the few settlements that did exist there suffered greatly. The strength of this unknown attacker was unreal, and the guild ended up having to mobilize an entire battalion of hunters to
Could
repel
it
it
be
back
Sora?
into the depths of the volcanic belt. Various guild scribes at the time noted that the creature showed strong similarities to one of the wyvern gods described in Furahian folklore. Further investigation and cooperation with local lore keepers eventually confirmed that this was indeed one of the creatures that had inspired the myth, the Black God, named Akantor by the guild, a word that means disaster in Old Furahian.
This guy? Pretty sure we looked at T-Rexes that were bigger than this.
Also known as the Tyrant of the Volcano, the Akantor is entirely endemic to the Erude
What?
region and makes its home deep in
You're saying that this little dude?
the volcanic mountains. How exactly it entered the folklore of
I would
Furahia,
have believed it
a
if it was
region far away
Nergigante.
from its home, is still a mystery. But there is little doubt that this is the creature the legends call the Black God. Just as the stories say, the Akantor is enormous, one of the largest creatures ever discovered. It is also extremely rare, and the ones that exist are better left alone. As a
Yeah, this
result,
is not even
research
compared to
surrounding them
Xena's
is
Jiva
somewhat
at all.
sparse.
I don't know about Black
Still,
God.
the unyielding spirit of the
I saw
guild
Xena, I
research
thought I was
teams
seeing
has
God.
granted us some insight into the life and physiology of the Akantor.
I would have believed
Its entire
Zora at
body is
least.
covered in a thick, hard black shell, the source of its epithet. This shell is extremely sturdy and resistant. Not even magma can harm it. Analysis of samples has revealed that this shell is actually not made up of living tissue. Instead, it is a mineral conglomerate that grows on the Akantor's body over time. The skin of the monster secretes a thick, calcium-dense liquid from its pores that binds ambient minerals and aerosol particles onto itself, first forming a gray sludge that eventually hardens into a black sheet of shell. Over the wyvern's life, this process grows the armor it is now famous for, the armor that grants it unrivaled defense from most possible threats. This armor is then managed and enhanced by the interlocking spikes that sprout from the wyvern's back. These structures are directly connected to the spine
We
through
watched the
muscles and
first one.
tendons,
That
and
was
can
like
be
3.5
moved
hours long,
slightly.
and a bunch
This
of
allows the
videos in
Akantor to
between.
adjust its armor to suit its needs. and the spikes
It's
also protect it from
it's a
airborne
pleasant surprise,
attacks.
I would say. I didn't think I'd be
Protected
into
by
it like
this
this either.
impressive suit of armor, the Akantor
I can't
prowls
help
the
but admire
volcanic
the passion and
regions,
went into
walking on all
this detail
fours
that
similar to a
most people are
T-Rex.
just not gonna see
Its
at all.
size makes it a slow and lumbering creature, but what the Akantor lacks in speed, it makes up for with persistence. The wyvern is believed to have excellent eyesight and will, once locked onto a target, advance towards it until it is destroyed. Once it has caught up to its quarry, the Akantor will attack using its most prominent physical adaptation, the enormous tusks.
It's like I
These
got the glasses on
massive
too.
spears are deadly and specialize in piercing through the shell armor of other monsters.
Anyway, time for
Specifically,
me to
the
sleep.
Akantor mostly
Thanks
preys
for
on
the ecology
Gravios
lesson.
and,
Yeah, thanks for hanging out for so long. Appreciate having you here again. Talk. Have a good
more
night.
rarely, its juvenile form Basarios. The tusks serve as a killing instrument that the victim has no defense against. Even older Gravios, whose shell is usually much tougher, stand no chance. As if the tusks weren't enough, the Akantor's saliva is highly corrosive and will actually soften the shell of any creature it comes into contact with. So by drooling on its prey, the Akantor can further enhance the deadliness of its tusks. Besides hunting, the tusks also aid in another one of Akantor's remarkable abilities, burrowing through the ground. The tusks are used to carve out a path through the earth, aided by the wyvern's impressive claws, which are hard enough to break through bedrock. Interestingly, the tusks grow by sheets of material layering themselves on top of each other periodically, meaning that a cross-section of them shows off tree-like rings that can be used to determine the Akantor's age. That, of course, requires the cutting off of a tusk, which is easier said than done. While above ground, the Akantor is an imposing force, easily dominating all that oppose it. Its enormous tail is mostly used to balance the equally massive body, but when swung around, it becomes a deadly wrecking ball. The Akantor announces its supremacy with deafening roars that even put those of the T-Rex to shame. And it can take it even further. The Akantor seems to have two mechanisms that allow for roaring. Its regular airways, which produce bellows as seen in other monsters, and an unknown, rarely studied organ that compresses air similarly to the T-Rex's viosonic system. This organ, however, is immensely powerful, nearly unseen in nature, and helps the Akantor produce what the guild calls sonic blasts. These are beams of concussive air pressure
I just love how a lot of these
generated
monsters,
by weaponized
and
roars
it's kind of like the
fed into this
T-Rex,
mystery
but
organ.
hear me out.
These
There's
blasts
more.
are extremely destructive and give the Akantor a ranged
This
weapon
one's
of immense power.
got jet engines on
It
it.
can even be used to shoot flying wyvern clean out of the sky, an option the Akantor will gladly make use of to secure a few additional snacks. Seasoned hunters have since realized that flying wyvern avoiding a specific area while flying is an omen that an Akantor might have settled down nearby. The Akantor excels at both offense and
Gigante T-Rex
defense,
mix.
and so it is a walking disaster wherever it appears. For reasons that aren't quite understood yet, the Akantor will
And if
sometimes fly
it
into
didn't
a
want to
mad
part with
rage,
its
destroying
spikes
everything
either.
in its path. When this happens, its shell begins to glow red, and its maw drools massive globules of corrosive saliva. The effect a rampaging Akantor has on the environment is also profound. Most animals instinctively flee as soon as they feel its presence, and the movements of the Colossus can cause eruptions and earthquakes as it burrows. Thus, the guild treats Akantor sightings as serious emergencies, and will mobilize itself rapidly to contain the threat. Through the Akantor's
Contain is a
discovery,
really nice way of
the
saying
guild's
kill it.
already present interest in the old Furahian myths skyrocketed. If one of the Wyvern gods was indeed a real creature, then it was possible that the others were as well. Unfortunately, while the legends did describe the Wyvern gods in some detail, it was not enough to construct a clear idea of what to look for. The myths described its fearsomeness and strength, not its diet and habitat, after all. But then, through what might be seen in hindsight as an act of divine intervention, the second Wyvern god was indeed found in a manner most dire. At the time, the guild sent out many research patrols into the Furahia region. One such patrol had been tasked with investigating a specific branch of the Wyvern god's story. In it, an ancestor of those who now live in Poke Village had actually repelled one of the gods with an enormous blade before disappearing. This version of the story was unique in that it had left a physical artifact behind, the massive blade the hero is said to have wielded, embedded into the earth near Poke Village. The patrol was meant to take samples from the weapon to bring back to Dundorma, but on the way stumbled upon a grisly sight. Numerous villages nestled between the mountains had been trampled and devastated, its people annihilated. Evidence at the sites implied that they had attempted to contact the guild, but
of course that would be a great sword user.
Priority was immediately shifted to investigating these incidents. It appeared that an avalanche had opened up a passage to a previously blocked zone
I
of the
believe it. If it was
mountains,
one guy
and that something
drew that creature away,
had emerged from there.
Had to be.
A humongous beast that was now rampaging across the region. A monster that matched many of the descriptions of one of the Wyvern gods. It was only through the bravery of an unknown hunter that the threat could be contained and the Wyvern could be studied.
It's me.
It was identified as the White God from the legend, and given the name Ukanlos, which can mean White God or Collapse in Old Furahian. The Ukanlos seems to only inhabit the deepest, most remote corners of icy tundras. Due to its size, however, it can be seen from far away, resembling a moving iceberg of sorts. Until that avalanche cleared the way to the center of Furahia, those glimpses were all the indigenous people ever got to see of the White God. The guild has since proposed that it might also live in Akura, the northernmost region of the known world, and a place that is, to this day, entirely unexplored. Wherever it may appear, the Ukanlos is a behemoth that easily rivals its legendary counterpart, the Akantor. It too is enormous, covered in a thick white shell that protects it from harm. Like with the Akantor, this shell is enhanced by being fused with ambient minerals and can withstand most threats. What distinguishes the shell of the Ukanlos is its unusual composition. Sharp, serrated scales cover the entire body, with each area having a slightly different shape. The scales on the underside of the body are small and rough, and serve to chisel and grind the ice beneath the creature to allow for a solid gait.
This is a flying wyvern?
The scales on the back, meanwhile, are larger, with the largest ones being called fins. This name implies their function.
Is it because it doesn't have fangs?
The Ukanlos can burrow through ice, and the large fins serve as massive saws that cut through the frost sheets and allow for efficient movement through the ground. The fins can also be used offensively by swimming past under a target with the sharp fins sticking out, cleaving it apart alongside the ice. When above ground, the Ukanlos might seem like it should be sluggish due to its size.
Oh, thank you.
Surprisingly, however, it is quite agile and can even leap high into the air.
Maximizing our knowledge.
Its limbs seem to be much stronger than expected, granting it this exceptional mobility. But the Ukanlos' most striking feature is its bizarre lower jaw, which
I felt
ends
like
in a
Biototus is
massive
the
disc
Ocanlos
of
that only
serrated
got.
scales. This structure seems to be used to shovel snow and ice, opening up paths for the
Yeah,
massive
the
creature.
music slapped in these
Since
other
the
games
jaw
too.
scales are also serrated, it probably also plays a role
And
in
also, I hope that
burrowing.
whole tail comes off. It's like
Curiously,
extra
its
cuttable for
upper
some
jaw
reason.
has external, teeth-like protrusions with an unknown purpose. Deuconlos' actual teeth are inside its mouth, and suggest that this monster might be a carnivore. While it has never been observed eating, the Ucanlos is surely a fierce predator. With its ridged
I'm still in
claws and
disbelief this is a
serrated
flying
underbelly
wyvern.
giving it a strong grip on any ice surface, this wyvern stands its ground and attacks all that it sees.
It
It
even
is
has 4
somehow
legs.
even
Shouldn't
more
it be a dragon?
aggressive than the Akantor, and will actively leave its territory to wreak havoc on surrounding areas to expand its reign. It sports most of the same abilities that the Akantor displays, except one. While the Ucanlos can also produce powerful roars, it cannot
Yeah, I was
shoot
thinking
off
the
sonic
exact same thing.
blasts. Instead, the Ucanlos has a different ranged weapon. By using an unknown organ, the Ucanlos stores some of the snow and ice it grinds up in its body. When needed, the unknown organ can then compress the frost material into a dense, snowy slush that can then be spewed out as an ice beam. It is not as destructive as the Akantor's sonic blasts and requires
When I
the
first see
buildup
it,
of
I thought
snow
it
and
had a
ice in the
duckbill.
body, but it can still be a devastating weapon. Akantor and Ucanlos, hence known as the
That is
two
a
wyvern
mean
gods.
underbite though.
Immediately upon their discovery, they caused enormous uproar in the guild. Entirely new contingency plans and
I hope that
mobilization
its jaw is
protocols
like
had to be
one of
written
the
and
ingredients to
canonized
make a
to
weapon.
deal with their threat if they emerge. But one area they truly shook up was that of the guild's classification system.
Yeah?
Due to their
Oh no, here
size,
it is.
their power, their mythological nature, and especially the effect they had on ecosystems, many scholars insisted that the wyvern gods should naturally be classified as elder dragons.
Yep.
For
I'm
a
one of those.
while, this was the dominant opinion, but as more sightings of the Akantor and Ucanlos occurred, consensus shifted. Their claws, as well as their stances, were noted to be very similar to those of the Tigrex,
Yeah.
and, by extension, those of the Wyvern Rex. The fact that the Akantor glows red when enraged also seemed like a vital clue to where they might fit in the Tree of Life.
No way.
Most shockingly, analysis of the wrists and fingers showed signs of either degenerated or not yet fully evolved wing bones. Due to this, the Akantor and Ucanlos were ultimately classified as flying wyverns,
No way.
in what is potentially one of the most controversial classifications in the entire history of the guild. The official hypothesis goes that the Akantor and Ucanlos are likely descendants of a wyvern even more ancient than the Wyvern Rex, and that, like the Tigrex, they did not evolve much due to their already powerful bodies.
Are we not gonna have a problem with the fact that they don't have any indication that they fly at all?
This unknown, undiscovered ancestor,
At least T-Rex
sometimes
actually
called
flies.
the origin wyvern, would then be the earliest possible emergence of what would later become the flying wyvern body plan. This missing link, however, remains entirely hypothetical as of now.
And it's either related to
But
bird, but they
despite
can't
many
fly.
heated debates,
That is
the
true.
wyvern gods were
is true.
officially classified as flying wyverns under the suborder Nonalisopoda, and thus
Wait, flying wyvern. Wait, isn't that Barioth? Not Barioth. Baroth? That's a flying wyvern? So is Devil Jill? Oh no. I see. It's a very loose term, I understand.
caused the first great revision of the guild's phylogeny. Much still remains to be discovered
Just
about the
imagine that
wyvern
flying
gods.
straight.
Direct
flying
research
pickle.
is difficult and often very
The
dangerous.
pickle is a flying wyvern.
So the guild has continued to investigate Furahian history and folklore
Basil Joe,
alongside
don't
field
feed me
observations of the
nightmares.
monsters themselves. This approach yielded a most recent, most terrifying revelation. While most versions of the myth seem to agree that there are 2 wyvern gods, some speak of a third.
Another one.
In scattered retellings of the legend, the world is ended by a battle between the black god, the white god, and the red god.
Okay.
This third being is also called the sand god in some versions. This secondary name tipped the guild off that, perhaps, a third species of non-alyssopod wyvern might exist in the vast deserts of the continent.
Wait, there's a good chance we might have this one in wilds if I'm like thinking about this right.
Looking into it,
like they really wanted to show that desert area,
of a
didn't
massive Ukanlos-like monster appearing in various deserts did in fact happen across guild history. Currently, the Mesoporta hunters, a division of the guild that specializes in unknown, fringe, or otherwise bizarre monsters,
not in wilds,
has
at
been
least in
tasked with
expansion.
investigating this third wyvern god, but results of their research are still pending.
Until today. Yeah, no. The fact that there's nothing else on it means that they probably looked at their notes. It's like, wait. There's one more that we've never revealed yet. Convenient timing, isn't it?
Discoveries such as the wyvern gods only further emboldened the guild in their efforts to utilize myths and legends as starting points for their research. That was easier said than done, however. Many folktales are rooted in superstition, and while they may be based on actual monster encounters at times, they are just as often the result of a misunderstanding, hallucination, or outright lie. Nevertheless, the guild considered this approach worthwhile, and dedicated a decent number of researchers and scriveners to the task. One group of legends that seemed immediately promising was that surrounding the ancient phantom. These stories come in 2 distinct versions. In the west of the continent,
I want to understand why the
tell
Kirin
of a
is an
forest
elder
spirit
dragon.
that hides in the mist that hangs over the trees, a being that punishes naughty children who misbehave and snatches them unseen. In the east, local myths describe a deity that fills the valleys with fog, a guardian that watches over the bridge between life and death. Across multiple retellings, an image of a creature that hides in fog and tricks people emerges. What made the ancient phantom especially interesting to the guild, however, was not merely these consistent signifiers, but the attitudes of the people who grew up with these stories.
And flying wyvern, more like.
Nearly all of them essentially treated this mythical creature as if it was already confirmed to exist, talking about its existence casually and openly. When questioned by the guild, some were even surprised to hear that it hadn't been officially discovered yet. Many figured that it had already been classified as an elder dragon, as that was what the locals seemed to unanimously agree on it being. When the perplexed guild researchers asked for details on its appearance, the case grew even stranger. Nearly no 2 descriptions were identical, many varying wildly on size, color, and general body plan.
Are we actually gonna go over chameleons?
Clearly, the ancient phantom existed, but in order to identify what it was exactly, a first-hand encounter would be necessary. And so, guild hunters and scholars ventured into the forests the creature was set to inhabit, and, after a lengthy investigation, managed to record its existence. It was indeed classified as an elder dragon, and named Chameleos.
My spirit monster.
Once clear and consistent reports were confirmed and compiled, The emerging image of the Chameleos was peculiar indeed. It is chameleon-like in appearance, covered in a purple
Yeah, he
skin
just
of
looks so
odd texture,
dumb.
with a large leaf-like tail that ends in multiple coiled protrusions.
This
Its
is the Elder
massive eyes
Dragon.
can move independently and allow the
And what I
creature to
want to
survey
know
both
is,
heaven and earth at the same time.
it's an Elder Dragon, but in Rise they're
Unlike
just
what
like,
one
oh,
would
can you go
expect
kill a
from an elder
Chameleos real
dragon,
quick?
the Chameleos is a calm, almost docile creature. While
Before we
it
can
will
handle the
defend
Rampage,
itself and is not
go take
fond
care
of
of it real
intruders,
fast.
it is considerably less aggressive than most known monsters. Its most intriguing feature, however, took some time to discover and was studied across many different researchers and institutions, for it is a truly magnificent ability. The Chameleos can become invisible. Across all early encounters, this remained a consistent observation,
Yeah, sounds like a
one
great
that
time, let's do it.
baffled researchers. At the time, no other monster with that ability had ever been found, and even today, many generations later, there are still only 3, including the Chameleos. It is an absurd power that bends reality, and one that the guild immediately began investigating thoroughly. For a long time,
They were so
research
impressed
went
about this,
nowhere.
they forgot about Lucid
The
Nargacuga.
Chameleos is an elusive creature to begin with, and observing invisibility turned out to be just as hard as it sounds. The first breakthrough didn't come from researchers, but from a hunting party that had fended off a curious Chameleos from a trade caravan. During the short scuffle, a piece of the dragon's skin had been torn off by a hunter, who then donated that sample to the Royal Paleontology Scrivener's Lodge. Here, the head researcher immediately went to work, subjecting the sample to all sorts of experiments.
Whoa.
Heat, cold, humidity, various conditions were tested to see if the skin's reaction to them could provide a hint as to how the Chameleos turned invisible. These efforts remained fruitless for a time, until a researcher working on an unrelated project accidentally dropped a fresh thunder sack from his sample box onto the Chameleos skin. What initially seemed like a disaster ended up being a blessing. The skin sample reacted to the electricity in the thunder sack and began changing color. It also seemed to maintain
Yeah, that
the
shouldn't have
electric
happened.
charge and
So
could even
he's
emit a
redacted now.
weakened electric pulse into the air around it. While no amount of tinkering could make the skin go entirely invisible, it seemed obvious that this trait must somehow be linked to the invisibility. There was a problem, however. No electrosac had ever been seen or found on the Chameleos, and without some way to control electricity, there was no explanation as to
think that
how
would
this
be
trait
great.
could play into the dragon's
I mean, we have
invisibility.
the Espinas
While
weapon.
various
Pulses
scientists
thing.
hummed and hawed over the skin sample, Chameleos sightings and reports from hunters continued to yield valuable morsels of information. One key observation was that the Chameleos' invisibility did not activate at random. It was always preceded by the dragon exhaling vast amounts of dull mist. And once the mist dissipated, the Chameleos would prioritize exhaling more of it. One hunter managed
I
to
always thought that
capture
was
some
just
of the mist in a flask and condense it
trying
back down
to
into liquid form,
be harder
allowing
to
it
see
to
even
be
though it's
studied.
just as
To
visible.
the shock of the researchers, the mist was not composed of water, but instead of a neurotoxin. In higher doses, this compound is an extremely deadly poison,
Wait,
but the
how are we
concentration in the
not dead?
Chameleos' mist was distinctly non-lethal. Instead, it was dosed such that this toxin would produce mild hallucinogenic effects in those who inhaled the mist, another piece of the puzzle, as this hallucinogen could be used to mess with someone's perception. This also explained why eyewitness accounts had previously been so unreliable, as the witnesses in question would have been under the effects of this hallucinogen and would not have been able to trust their eyes. The final discovery that finally blew the case wide open came, once again, from a field sample. This time, a chunk of Chameleos' flesh with still intact blood vessels. Close inspection of the sample found specialized pores that could release their contents into the bloodstream directly when stimulated. What was truly fascinating was what those spores contained. Tiny amounts of pulverized fusium ore. Elder
I
dragons were
still
known to
refuse to
eat
believe
or
that
at
they
least
looked at
lick
this thing and
ores,
said,
and the
yeah,
Chameleos seemed to be
that's
no
an elder
exception.
dragon. Right
It
up there
specifically being
with every
fusium
other one.
ore
Kushala,
was the key to finally understanding the Chameleos' ability, however.
that thing.
While most hunters know it as a sturdy material used in weapons crafting, fusium ore has another property that makes it useful to master blacksmiths. It produces a weak electric current when mixed with elder dragon blood. Through the combined efforts of hunters and scientists, these discoveries were synthesized into a functional hypothesis of exactly how the Chameleos
Put you
goes
back in
invisible.
story 3.
The ability relies on the
Agreed.
interplay between the skin, the blood, and the mist. The Chameleos releases traces of fusium ore into its bloodstream,
Okay.
which causes the generation of a weak electric current. This current spreads to the skin, which begins changing color. The Chameleos carefully modulates the current and skin color until its body is as close to translucent as it can get. Simultaneously, the dragon begins exhaling the toxic mist, covering a wide area around it. The hallucinogenic neurotoxin in the mist disrupts the perception of those who inhale it, tricking them into losing sight of the Chameleos even further. Finally, the electric charge in the skin interacts with the particulates in the mist surrounding the Chameleos, changing the composition slightly such that they bend light differently. This completes
I think
the
it's a
effect
shame they didn't make
and
the
turns
mist
the
more
Chameleos
engaging
fully
in that
invisible.
case.
It is a wonder of nature,
Like, for
a
an elder dragon,
three-pronged mechanism working in
I never felt
harmonic
like it had its,
tandem
like,
to enable
it's
a
its elder
truly
dragon mode, you know?
mind-bending ability. Even as some details about this ability remain unknown, the very fact of its existence is unbelievable. This hypothesis continues to be reinforced and even expanded. Hunters have noted that damaging or breaking the Chameleos' luminous nose horn weakens its invisibility drastically, making it unable to fully disappear. This has led to the belief that the
noted.
command center for this ability, or at least one of its
I always thought
command
it was the
nodes,
tail.
is located in the nose horn. Invigorated by this amazing discovery,
Which is
hunters
everywhere. The
and
reason you
researchers
can't
alike
come on and hit wall is
mobilized to
because
further
she
observe
pushed it.
Chameleos in the wild. Thanks to the
Thought it was like
dragon's
real
calm
lore for a
nature,
moment.
these were some of the safest Elder Dragon investigations the guild has ever conducted. Chameleos are only found in humid environments, which is likely tied to the reliance on mist. High ambient humidity probably helps
So did
in
they
its
call things
generation
elder
and
dragons
upkeep.
for their
Once observations
level of
started,
danger, or just
one
like
of their first findings was
technical
the Chameleos'
classification?
high intelligence, displayed in one of the more amusing anecdotes from that time. Investigation teams traveling through Chameleos territory kept noticing that their supplies were disappearing one after another. Potions, rations, even maps and pickaxes would just vanish. Then, on one occasion, a hunter caught the thief in the act. It was an invisible Chameleos, snatching the items away with its long, sticky tongue. The only reason it was spotted at all was because its tongue does not go fully invisible. Initially, this behavior was assumed to be a result of curiosity and merely reactive. But further observations have revealed that this is premeditated behavior. At some point, the Chameleos realized that supplies such as these are what allow humans to venture into the frontier and into its territory, and that, once they ran out, the humans are forced to retreat and leave. So, by stealing these items, the Chameleos strategically pushes the intruders to leave of their own accord. In a sense, this kleptomania is the Chameleos' way of resolving conflicts peacefully.
That's actually
Even
really
when
cute.
directly confronted, the Chameleos is generally hesitant to escalate. Numerous encounters with Chameleos were diffused by hunters simply walking away slowly, a gesture the creature understands and accepts as a signal of non-aggression. This disposition is probably why local populations have such a casual knowledge of and relation to the dragon. As long as you respect its boundaries, you have little to fear.
What? This seems like a good boy. Why was there a hub mission to be like, kill it, kill this thing now, bring back its blood? He just seems like a nice guy.
Unfortunately, violent encounters still happen. Some humans are reckless,
my God.
and some chameleos are just more aggressive than others.
Are we the bad guys?
While these situations are regrettable, they have provided the guild with vital information on the chameleos' offensive and defensive abilities. Enshrouded in its mist, the chameleos uses its invisibility to attack its targets out of sight.
They
Its
didn't
large
have
body,
to hurt it.
short but sharp claws, and hard tail can all be used as powerful physical
I still
weapons.
can't believe it's another dragon.
One surprisingly effective offensive behavior of the dragon is its unusual tempo of movement. The chameleos moves in slow, rhythmic patterns that make it look quite sluggish when relaxed. In combat, however, the creature erratically alternates between slow and fast motions to such a degree that predicting its attacks becomes near impossible, even for a seasoned hunter. Defensively, the skin of the chameleos is quite hard and can withstand a surprising amount of abuse. But the real challenge is actually hitting it in the first place. The dragon has an almost supernatural awareness of its surroundings and seems to have no blind spots. How exactly this is possible is unclear, but hunters noted that damage to the tail seemed to cause the chameleos to move more clumsily and even disrupt its invisibility somewhat, as if it was suddenly unsure of its environment. The tail has thus since been theorized to be a sensory organ. Initially, the hypothesis was that the protrusions on the tail could somehow detect changes in light, but more recent findings have proposed an even more daring idea. The curvature of the protrusions, and especially the coiled tail tip, seem reminiscent of a cochlea, the spiral canal found in the ear. The chameleos has also been noted to react strongly to sounds coming from behind it. Thus, the current belief is that the protrusions capture and direct sound waves from the environment into an unknown auditory sensor somewhere on the tail, probably the underside. In other words, the tail is believed to essentially be one giant external ear. This gives the chameleos a strong sensory awareness of both its front and back, and indeed eliminates most blind spots. However, getting slashed or trampled by the chameleos is only secondary to the true threat of the dragon. For if there is one thing that the chameleos is a master of, it is toxins. The compound used in its mist is only one of a dozen or so different poisons the dragon can produce. The chameleos has a unique toxin sac that is connected to the digestive system. Parts of the food the chameleos devours are fed into this sac, where they are mixed with a catalyst fluid that generates a variety of poisons. Which exact toxins are created depends on the dragon's diet, and because chameleos can have quite varied diets depending on where they live, the toxins they have access to actually varies by region. One of the more exciting and dangerous parts of researching chameleos is cataloging all the different toxins it can produce, and
let's see. Skin rot toxin from wing membranes. I was hoping that there would have been a brain rot toxin.
which regional variation is able to use them. Their effects also vary greatly. Some attack the muscles, some dissolve skin, and others paralyze specific parts of the body or shut down organs. The Chameleos can also release these compounds in various ways. It can mix them into its saliva and spit them out as slimy globules, which seems to be the most straightforward method. It can also, however, turn most of these poisons into mist. A hunter who stood near a Chameleos as it released its hallucinogenic mist noted that the creature's chest was vibrating ever so subtly, but at an incredible frequency. So it appears that the Chameleos possesses some kind of organ that can vibrate its poisons at ultrasonic rates, turning it into mist in the process. The dragon also has small pores on the underside of its wings that can allow it to release poison even from its wing membranes. Even without this, the wings play a role in its combat strategy. By flapping them, the Chameleos can manipulate the position and direction of poison clouds, thus controlling the battlefield. To no one's surprise, the Chameleos itself is essentially immune to all manner of poisons. It is the undisputed king of toxins, and can even pose a threat to other monsters known for their poison resistance, such as the Wraths. Despite this fierce ability, many consider the Chameleos a benevolent creature, rarely the cause for any trouble. Some consider it so peaceful, in fact, that they question why it is even considered an elder dragon. While many locals generally assumed it to fit into that category, many guild researchers, especially young ones, are more critical of it. The creature is peaceful, it is odd, it is peculiar, it doesn't seem like an elder dragon.
Oh no, the
guild,
young
however,
ones in
remains
particular.
firm in their judgment for
Getting called
one
out.
reason. While the current threat of the Chameleos is somewhat manageable, the potential threat is incalculably immense. A concerning detail in Chameleos research is that there does not seem to be a limit to how wide of an area its mist can cover. While most Chameleos only release enough to cover its immediate surroundings, cases of one dousing an entire forest in its toxic fog do make their way to the guild every now and then. This, combined with the presence of its ultrasonic organ, presents a grim possibility. The Chameleos could technically turn any of its many poisons into a mist that could be spread across an unspecified range. The implications of this are terrifying. Say, for example, a Chameleos has access to voice sap toxin. In smaller doses, this compound simply paralyzes the vocal cords and the throat, and prevents the affected from speaking. But a Chameleos has full control over the concentration and form of its poisons, and when concentrated, all of its toxins are deadly. So, say for example, this Chameleos decides to cover a populated area with a mist of concentrated voice sap toxin. It could, within minutes, shroud an entire settlement in silent death, all life perishing in choking agony, unable to scream, an entire ecosystem wiped away on a whim. There would be nothing anyone could do at that point. It's an extreme scenario, and so far entirely hypothetical, but the Chameleos' intelligence also implies a degree of unpredictability. It may seem peaceful and docile, but were anything to set it off, the consequences of its wrath could be catastrophic.
And so that's why we need to go create absolutely resentful Chameleos, like we did with Diablos and Rajang, and go hunt them. And if we cut off its horn and didn't kill it, maybe it decides, actually, maybe you all should just perish. Instead of just leaving it alone. I don't get it.
And so, the guild insists that it remain classified as an elder dragon to adequately represent and prepare for the power that it wields. In the modern era, elder dragons such as the Chameleos are synonymous with power. Even those living in civilized regions, far away from the wild frontiers of the world, know of the mighty dragons that shake the earth, poison the air, and command the thunder. But these days, there is a certain casualness to it. Elder dragons are just another branch of life, and while powerful, there are many stories of them being bested. Some might even know hunters who have seen or even repelled elder dragons. While they are still feared and respected, as they should be, they are also more understood as natural parts of our world. That was not always the case. In a time before the Hunters Guild, before monster hunting had really even been a way of life anyone imagined, in a time so ancient only the oldest Wyverians recall it, in such a time, elder dragons were already feared beyond measure. Back then, even regular monsters were unstoppable forces that regular people could only try to avoid and escape from. To have an elder dragon appear near your hometown must have felt as if all the forces in the cosmos were conspiring against you. Even as monster hunting started to slowly develop as a
Beautiful
profession,
mustache.
elder dragons still remained unknowable and unbeatable. This was not just due to their power, but also because they were unpredictable. Most elder dragons are highly intelligent, and all of them can turn an ecosystem upside down on a whim. It would take a massive, systematic effort to counter that, and in those distant times, there simply was no such thing. Up until a few hundred years ago, the only tool civilization had to somewhat manage the elder dragon threat were the dragon diviners. These Wyverian polymaths used observational and spiritual methods to roughly predict when and where an elder dragon would appear, and warned the surrounding people accordingly. Wyverians are said to be descendants of dragons, a lineage parallel to how humans developed from primates. It is known that they are extremely attuned to the flow of nature, and some have even theorized that under certain conditions, Wyverians can even sense an elder dragon's intentions through some sort of ancestral link. That is merely speculation though, and either way, the accuracy of these dragon diviners was far from perfect. But what truly held them back was that they were scattered across the lands, and that they were inherently disorganized and erratic. There was no protocol, no order, no study to their craft. They merely warned citizens in their vicinity whenever they thought an elder dragon might be near. It was better than nothing, but still not enough. In places where dragon diviners were not available, the people often turned to religion, building entire systems of faith around the worship and appeasement of elder dragons. For what else could they do in the face of such absolute power, but pray that its wrath does not descend upon them? Then, finally, change came at the hands of the great elder of Dundorma, known as His Immenseness by some. Frustrated with civilization being constantly on the defensive against elder dragons, the Great Elder summoned all dragon diviners and dragon scholars from across the continent to Dundorma. With them, the Great Elder established
felt like that
the
guy would have
Elder
been
Dragon
Mal at the
Observation
old
Center,
stage.
an organization that would rely on empirical, scientific study of the elder dragons and compile all knowledge
Hey,
regarding
Night
them
Hydra.
in an effort to finally push back
We're
against
educating
the threat.
ourselves before wilds.
The Great Elder then seized
So I
Dundorma's
beseech the
prayer
knowledge
hall
of the Great
and
Elder.
converted it into the Elder Hall, the beating heart of all Elder Dragon research. This paid off tremendously. The Observation Center focused on compiling records and knowledge regarding elder dragons and similarly powerful monsters. By combining the efforts of diviners, scholars, and hunters, Dundorma's Elder Dragon Research Center became a vital part of preventative and ecological research.
Plus, it makes
Using their
hunting
dragon
them that much
balloons,
more personal
scholars observe elder dragons from afar
when you know their
and
story.
report all of their behavior and movement back to the center using carrier birds. The center then analyzes the findings, using them to warn settlements ahead of time if an elder dragon appears to be going in their general direction, as well as educating hunters on how to deal with them in the wild. This organized, free flow of information, as well as meticulous record keeping, has proven immensely useful, and similar organizations began appearing almost immediately. One also cannot understate the symbolic power of the Great Elder converting Dundorma's prayer hall into the linchpin of this organization. Standing atop the city, Dundorma's temple had long been a holy place. Its transformation heralded a sort of cultural revolution across the old continent. Seeing the results of Dundorma's scientific approach to elder dragons, many previously religious regions began distancing themselves from worship in favor of an observation-based study of the world.
Does this almost sound like a plot
creating
to
an
a
entire
Zelda
generation
game?
of eager scholars waiting to join in on the quest to unraveling elder dragons. Of course, in order to inspire, the Elder Dragon Observation Center would need to produce results. Luckily, one of their earliest breakthroughs was in regards to one of the oldest and most venerated myths of the central continent, the Steel Dragon. It appeared in countless legends all across the lands, tales of a metal beast shrouded in storms. It was, coincidentally, also a being that had been worshipped as a weather god by many of the same groups of people who abandoned their faith to help out the observation team after the Great Elder's seizing of the temple. Perhaps this was the reason why the Steel Dragon myth was investigated so thoroughly and so early, many new members of the team being eager to understand the legend that had defined so much of their culture. One way or another,
I really
the
hope that they
ambitions
go
and
over ball
skills of the
strikes.
observation team coalesced and soon bore fruit, as the Steel Dragon was sighted and then studied officially not long after. It was one of the earliest properly recorded elder dragons, given the name Kushala Daora. If you asked a random civilian to describe an elder dragon, most would probably end up reconstructing the Kushala Daora. A slim figure consisting of 4 legs, 2 massive wings, a tail, and a horned head. It is the spitting image of a traditional depiction of a dragon. Then again, many of those traditional depictions probably originate from prehistoric Kushala sightings anyway, so that is not surprising. Of all the known elder dragons, the Kushala Daora is perhaps the best studied one, mainly because it tends to appear near human settlements somewhat frequently. It also has an extremely wide habitat range, appearing all over the old world and even in some areas of the new world. And, uncharacteristically for an elder dragon, it is a fairly calm creature most of the time, tolerating the presence of animals and even humans much more than most monsters. These factors make it easier to research than most other dragons. But even after having been studied for so long and seen comparatively often, the Kushala Daora is still a fascinating, mysterious creature. For one, it boasts one of the most unusual defensive adaptations ever seen in the animal kingdom: a skin made of metal. The entire hide of the Kushala Daora is metallic, akin to steel in its composition.
I'm really surprised that
This hide
we
protects the
don't
dragon
bounce
from
off of
all
this
manner of damage.
out of
It can't
Kushala
be cut or broken through,
more than
and it
any other
repels most
dragon.
projectiles,
Because most of those are
man-made
just
or
like bone or
otherwise.
carrot based, no?
Only extreme heat, such as that emanating from lava or created by fellow dragons, can seriously compromise this armor's integrity. This ultimate defense is probably why Kushala Daora are sometimes seen just strolling around among other creatures. They have little to nothing to fear, since their hides are essentially impenetrable. It isn't just an outer layer of metal either. The skeleton of the Kushala Daora is fused directly into the skin, with external bones mirroring the internal ones. Initially, this was believed to be an exoskeleton, but it has since been discovered that the Kushala Daora does have bones on the inside of its body as well. This double skeleton probably aids with stability and movement. The inner bones keep the body stable, while the outer bones force the heavy metal hide to move by expanding and contracting it. Studying the anatomy of a Kushala is, however, extremely difficult. Even if an intact specimen is recovered, the insides of the dragon are an unintelligible mess of metal fusing and mixing with flesh, so guild scholars have had a hard time making sense of it. It is, for example, still not known how this hide develops in the first place. Like many elder dragons, the Kushala Daora has been observed eating ores, and nothing else. So perhaps it derives its metallic armor from its diet. Another theory is that it might be able to accumulate metallic aerosols from its environment, similar to how the shell of the metal rafts is believed to have evolved. Either way, through some mysterious process, the Kushala Daora can metallize its tissue and reinforce its body. One interesting discovery that was, however, made is that the tissue in the various recovered Kushala samples was inconsistently metallized. Some only had metal skin, while others had a thick layer of metal underneath the skin. Some had metal teeth, and a few even had traces of metallization in the heart and the stomach. Mysteries still surround this discovery, but some scholars have proposed a daring theory. It could be that as a Kushala Daora ages, whatever process allows it to turn soft tissue into metal begins malfunctioning. This would, in principle, be akin to what we call old age in humans, previously vital bodily functions gradually degrading as a result of an accumulation of errors across a long lifetime. In the Kushala Daora's case, its life would end naturally when it accidentally metallized its internal organs, its body shutting down as its heart gradually turns into solid
Oh,
steel.
that's actually so sad.
Some have even extended this theory and suggested that the Kushala Daora found in the New World might be feeding on the crystals in the Elder's recess specifically to prevent this from happening, as the bioenergy contained in those crystals reinvigorates and maintains life functions, such as their metallization process. This is, however, at this point, entirely speculation, and more research remains necessary. While it may spell its death in the end potentially, during the Kushala Daora's prime, this metal hide serves it well. Not only is it impenetrable, it is also extremely heavy. This gives the Kushala a solid stance that cannot be easily broken by even floods or landslides. Its heavy body withstands those without moving an inch. And yet this weight does not slow the dragon down. The Kushala Daora has powerful, thick limbs and well-developed muscles that can move its heavy body with ease. In fact, watching a Kushala Daora pounce and run, one would never imagine just how heavy this slim creature actually is. The result of having a heavy body that can be moved quickly is that the physical attacks of the dragon are devastating. Its claws can cut through nearly anything thanks to the enormous force their weight produces. Some Kushala Daora can even enhance this deadliness by imbuing their claws with dragon energy. Nothing is known about this ability and how it works, however.
I'm surprised this piece of metal can actually
fly. The dragon's tail is also deadly, able to kill large flying wyverns with a single swipe.
But that must be
Its metal hide has been the stuff of legends for ages, and even before the dragon and its biological peculiarities were properly studied, many of the civilizations that worshipped the Kushala Daora likened its skin to steel. In the modern day, fragments of Kushala skin and Kushala scales are highly sought after for their quality, and an entire market has emerged focused on selling fakes. Between chunks of regular steel or hastily painted Kutku scales, the markets of Dandorma and Minegard are full of charlatans. An easy way to tell the authenticity of a Kushala scale is to gently hit it. A real scale will produce an eerie, high-pitched ringing, like a metal bell. This metal hide raised many questions, but one burned especially hot in the minds of early researchers. The Kushala Daora is incredibly heavy due to the metal, so heavy that no amount of muscle mass should allow it to fly. Its wings may be massive, but they themselves are also covered in heavy metal plating. And yet, the dragon is often seen flying near effortlessly, gliding through the air as if it were light, like a bird or flying wyvern. This was unexplainable, until the observation center and the guild once again swallowed their pride and lent an ear to rumors. For a long time, people had spoken of the Kushala's ability to control the very wind itself, its roar commanding the heavens like a chained dog. For a while, these ideas were dismissed as mere sensationalism. But as guild hunters and observers encountered the Kushala firsthand again and again,
I
it
really
became
hope that they would have
obvious
made it
that the
that
rumors
much
were
weaker to
true.
blunt the attacks.
The Kushala Daora can indeed control the wind and, by extension, the weather. It has since been found that this wind control is what enables the Kushala to fly. By creating and manipulating updrafts under its wings, the dragon can force itself into the air despite its weight and ride air currents of its own making. As per usual with elder dragons, this answer simply raised more questions. How does the Kushala control the wind? The precise mechanism is still not understood, and due to the dragon's bizarre internal anatomy, the only real way to unravel this ability is to simply observe it. The Kushala Daora can produce winds from within its body, which are emitted directly through the hide. These winds can range from small breezes to tornadoes to atmospheric zephyrs that change the entire climate of a region. In fact, it has been noted that the mere presence of a Kushala tends to alter the weather, causing storms and gales in the area. Since the winds seem to emerge from the body, it is likely that the dragon has an internal organ that can produce them. No such organ has ever been recovered or found by hunters, though. The wind may even be produced
That's exactly
by the
what
hide
we're
itself.
up to, Anon.
The handful of
Need
armors
to get
made from
educated
Kushala
before
Daora
wilds.
skin still emit a light windy breeze
Hope you're
and
doing
aid
well
in the
tonight.
wearer's movements. Another key observation in this matter was that whenever a hunter managed to damage or break the short horns on the Kushala's head, its proficiency with its winds drastically degraded.
So I'm really hoping stuff like that is true in game, where breaking the horns actually makes it weaker. Just hit its head. You know what they said about the Furious Red Dragon? You know, yeah, I gonna learn everything. Exactly. This entire thing, this is just only generation 2, not even the first one. You wanna know how to stop a Furious Red Dragon? Have you tried hitting its head enough? That'll turn off the lightning.
Leading researchers to believe that the horns control the winds once they
Doesn't
are
have a tail.
produced.
Try the head.
How exactly they do this is unknown. Some scholars believe that the horns use electromagnetic waves to manipulate the paths of air currents, but that is mere speculation at this point and nearly impossible to test. However it may function, the fact of the matter is that this ability is what makes the Kushala Daora a walking disaster, more than worthy of the title Elder Dragon. Its winds come in many forms. At its most basic, this ability manifests as a shroud of gales surrounding the dragon. This wind aura allows the Kushala to fly, but it also offers an additional degree of protection. The wind around its body repels projectiles, deflects physical attacks, and even pushes enemies back if they get too close.
I don't know, I feel like there'd have to be a
Another
lot more wind
immovable
pressure
shield
than that to
on
carry
top of an
all this
already
metal.
impenetrable armor. This aura holds deeper significance still. Its power surges as the Kushala's rage grows, and the strength of the wind aura influences the strength of all of its other winds. It is thus reasonable to conclude that its other wind abilities all derive from this aura. The Kushala Daora can use its winds to change the weather itself, presumably by using its aura as a conduit to force its will onto the atmosphere in its surroundings.
I'm sorry, but TikTok has
This
ruined
is
the
a
word
devastating
aura for me.
ability, as it can cause massive storms, tornadoes, typhoons, and even sandstorms. In one well-documented case, a village was beset by snowstorms for weeks without pause because a nearby Kushala had been upset by some unknown factor. On a smaller scale, the Kushala Daora can create wind blasts around its body and from its mouth, spewing out pressurized air like other dragons would spew fire. The mouth of the Kushala has indeed developed to be a sort of wind cannon, with a long snout lined with special tissue that compresses its wind further and further as it travels through it. Even its teeth are in service of this, being small and angled such that they form a guiding canal. The winds from the Kushala's mouth vary greatly in strength. They can be mere gusts meant to deter attackers, or they can be missiles of destructive air that rip targets apart. Again, the power of this particular application of its wind depends on its wind aura and its rage. A full-power Kushala Daora wind cannon is among the most destructive single monster attacks ever recorded, and is entirely unstoppable as it pulverizes solid rock instantly. With its wings, the Kushala Daora can produce swirling gales that combine into raging cyclones and twisters. These wind beasts broil and seethe, destroying all that they encounter while also hiding the dragon from sight. The Kushala seems to be able to control their paths, and some especially skilled individuals can even force two small twisters to combine into a massive one. These attacks are devastating, and can even be enhanced by the environment. When used in snowy regions, many of the Kushala Daora's winds carry ice and frost with them, and on the very rare occasion that a Kushala ventures near lava, its cyclones can sometimes catch fire and turn into infernal hurricanes.
I actually like that
As
they
already mentioned,
added
as the
that detail
Kushala
in game.
Daora grows angrier, its winds become
Fire
stronger.
tornadoes and all that.
When its rage reaches its apex, the wind undergoes a peculiar transformation. It turns pitch black. In this state, called dragon wind, the gales of the Kushala Daora are so powerful that they can cleave enemies in half easily. The Kushala's dragon wind is rarely seen and impossible to defend against. One can only watch as the black storms rip apart all that stands in their way. 2 layers of unrivaled defense and an offensive ability that is nearly unstoppable. That is the power of an Elder Dragon. Repelling a Kushala Daora is thus extremely difficult, and for a time, the knowledge gathered by the Elder Dragon Observation Center did little to aid in the practical reality of fighting such a calamity. But then, finally, a weakness was found. The Kushala Daora is extremely weak to poisons of all kinds. Why this is the case is still up for debate. One leading hypothesis is that the process by which the dragon metallizes its tissue requires its immune system to be quite accepting of foreign materials entering the body, leading to a severely lacking immune response in case of poison. Whatever the case may be, poisoned weapons and arrows can incapacitate the Kushala reliably, and they seem to especially disrupt whatever organ it uses to produce its winds. For hunters looking to face the steel dragon, poisoned armaments are therefore indispensable. And so, time marched on. Hunters, with the aid of the observation center, pushed back against elder dragons and fought many battles against many Kushala Daoras
I'm gonna have
specifically.
to double check if it actually makes a
Over
difference
time,
in gameplay.
research on the creature progressed,
If it
and
does,
more
I'd be impressed.
fascinating details came to light. One aspect of the dragon that beckoned clarification was the matter of its species. Numerous hunters remarked that across their encounters with these dragons, they seemed to vary greatly in color. Some were a brilliant silver, others a dull gray, and some even a dark brown. Did this genus simply have an abundance of subspecies? Closer investigation revealed that no, the genus Kushala was a monotypic genus, a genus that only includes a single species. The actual reason for its color variation was much stranger. The hide of the Kushala is made of metal, and as such, it is not immune to the wear and tear metal experiences. Specifically, the hide oxidizes over time, its integrity changing alongside its color. This color shift happens on a cycle. The hide darkens and browns as it oxidizes, until the hide needs to be replaced. At this point, the Kushala Daora retreats into cold environments, where the freezing air is thought to aid in the next step. That step is to molt. Like an insect, the Kushala Daora breaks out of its old hide
we're actually
with a
watching it?
fresh armor already grown under its surface. This new hide is, at this point, milky white and quite soft by comparison, as it hasn't fully finished developing. In this state, the Kushala Daora is quite vulnerable. Knowing this, a Kushala that is getting ready to molt becomes extremely aggressive and territorial, hoping to scare off or vanquish any enemies before it enters this sensitive phase of its cycle. This strategy seems to work, as across all of history, only a handful of people, mostly Wyverians, have ever laid eyes upon a white Kushala Daora. Their discarded old hides, however, have been found in numerous cold regions, and often become a hotbed for smaller critters to nest in. This disqualified all the discolored Kushala Daora from being subspecies, as they were simply the known species at different times in its molting cycle. There was, however, one stage of this cycle that the guild chose to name a variant due to the extended danger it poses whenever it emerges.
There's a variant
They
set?
call it the Rusted Kushala Daora, a Kushala that is in its final phase before molting. These individuals are entirely brown, their hide oxidized and rusted completely. They are essentially just waiting to molt, and since the aggression of a Kushala Daora increases rapidly the closer it gets to molting, the Rusted Kushala is a violent, terrifying creature. In terms of abilities, it is essentially equal to its steel-colored state. Its rusted hide may look brittle, but it is actually even tougher, as it is reinforced by the second metal hide underneath it that has already formed partially.
Oh yeah,
But the reason the Rusted Kushala Daora was named a variant isn't a difference of power, but one of behavior. During the rest of its molting cycle, the Kushala Daora ranges from being a peaceful, unbothered creature to a grumpy but mostly passive dragon. The Rusted Kushala, however, will actively attempt to decimate anything it can find within its surroundings, its instincts screaming at it to eradicate all possible threats before molting. This leads it to actively attacking human settlements as well, and many dramatic battles with it have been fought at the gates of Dundorma. Luckily, Rusted Kushala are only a temporary threat.
If fighting Rusted
Weighed
Kushala
down by wearing
meant that
two
it would
sets of
like use
armor,
shards of
it
its
will eventually retreat
rusted
to its
metal
chosen molting
into the
spot
tornadoes.
and break apart, emerging in brilliant white and restarting the cycle.
Like it starts shedding as you're fighting it. That would have been so sick. If the Kushala doesn't kill you, the tetanus will.
Across the Hunters Guild's second generation of research, few projects were as ambitious as the Elder Dragon investigations. While Elder Dragon observatories had existed for quite some time at this point, the insights into creatures like Chameleos and Kushala Daora galvanized a need to find out more about these powerful beings, not just because they were dangerous, but because they were fascinating. In hindsight, many consider the second generation
What if it's just worse?
as
Was it
the
Kushala?
bedrock for
This
all
perma does your
future
weapon?
Elder Dragon research. This desire
I
to
can see that.
understand naturally resulted
No
in
whetstone is
more
fixing this.
fundamental questions being asked. First and foremost, what even are Elder Dragons?
But it's like sharpness down.
So far, it had mostly been a
Just hit it
functional
harder.
title.
Yeah, just
If
hit
a
it on the
creature
head.
was
What are you talking
unknowable,
about?
affected the ecosystem disproportionately, and was so powerful that it required large-scale mobilization
Should make it so
and
that
evacuation
if Rusted
to deal
Kushala
with,
went to like eat
it
your
would be
weapon.
called an Elder Dragon to make sure that hunters and civilians alike took it seriously enough. But if research was to really take off and
Aw.
be shared across multiple semi-independent
Is that why they called
organizations,
Chameleos an
some
Elder Dragon?
basic,
Because nobody was
consistent
taking it
definition
seriously?
had to be established. After much
I
humming
think I
and
understand
hawing,
it better now.
scholars of the guild eventually settled on a few key axioms of what defines an Elder Dragon.
Chameleos is truly a
Most
sire.
importantly, it was decided that the term Elder Dragon was to be a waste bin classification. A group whose members' shared feature is that they fit nowhere else in the classification system. This may seem
Therapy ask.
dismissive, but it does adequately
Waste
account for the
bin
fact
category.
that a common thread across all Elder Dragons is that they
No.
mostly live in myth and folklore, with very little concrete knowledge on their biology and ecology. Trying to place them
That's just their way
anywhere
of saying
on the
Chameleos is
existing
just
tree
special.
of life would take assumptions upon assumptions, and so an entirely separate group defined by that disconnect made the most sense. This was exacerbated by the realization that Elder Dragons didn't seem well represented in the fossil record either, making any taxonomical claims about them quite difficult. Thus, a core characteristic of Elder Dragons was determined to be that they seem largely disconnected from all other forms of life in terms of evolutionary ancestry. That is not to say that no commonalities and patterns emerged within this group. As research progressed, scholars noted that the thus far recorded Elder Dragons did in fact display physiological similarities between each other. Many of the discovered species shared a body plan: 4 legs, 2 wings, a tail, and a head, often horned. This was not entirely consistent, the Kirin being an obvious outlier, but it was notable.
Let's not forget about the other one that's
Moreover,
called
this
a
body plan has,
flying
to this
wyvern.
day, never been seen in a creature that wasn't already considered an Elder Dragon. So this general body shape is perhaps the ancestral link that all dragons share, and the reason they don't fit with any wyvern or beast lineages. As analytical tools improved, more insights into Elder Dragons were gained. The blood of elders is special, containing a mysterious compound that imbues it with special energies. Blood samples are thus to this day a good method to determine if a creature might be related to Elder Dragons. With these workable definitions in hand, researchers continue to investigate all sorts of myths and legends. One story that caught their attention was that of the Flame Dragon. Like the Steel Dragon, this entity appeared in many stories of various origins, always wielding a broiling kiln of fire in its maw, often revered as a god of destruction and rage. The reason why this myth in particular was interesting to the guild lay in the description of the dragon. In all versions of the story, it was coated in fur and had a head reminiscent of a beast rather than a wyvern. To find a furry Elder Dragon would be fascinating, and perhaps shine some further light into the lineage. Another curious detail about this dragon is that across all of its tellings, Its appearance is shockingly consistent in description, except its color. Half of the time, the dragon is described as red, while in many other myths, it is said to be blue. This consistent inconsistency seemed like an indicator of something truly worth studying. As they ventured into villages and regions where the myth was dominant, scholars gradually gained an understanding of what this creature might be. One researcher even spotted a likely candidate of this myth from afar, a dragon-like silhouette, distinctly blue in color. Even after this sighting, though, many locals insisted that the dragon was actually red. This back and forth continued until an older researcher was able to observe a flame dragon up close, watching it lick a cave wall. After it had left, the researcher collected saliva samples, and the investigation was able to kick into high gear. Curiously, this specimen was red, and so knowledge progressed until, finally, a comprehensive idea of this being was constructed. There were, in fact, 2 flame dragons, not different species, but rather different sexes. The male flame dragon is red and was named Teostra by the guild, while the female
That one
is
licks
blue
walls.
and was given the name Lunastra. While their fur did not end up being as revelatory as the guild had hoped, it was still a massive find. The first recorded case of sexual
That's why the
dimorphism
Teostra's
in an
weaker.
elder dragon species. Aside from the color and the shape of their horns, both types of flame dragon are quite similar. They have long, stiff tails and massive, furry wings. Their backs are covered in hair, while their limbs and underbellies are protected by a hard dragon shell. Their heads are most curious. A truly beast-like face, reminiscent of that of a lion, surrounded by a wild mane and beard, crowned with massive horns and armed with protruding tusks. Even if no clear link to fanged wyvern or fanged beasts could be established to this day, the similarities are noteworthy. For a long time, the 2 dragons were only ever sighted alone, which made their exact relationship hard to determine. It wasn't until fairly recently that the first mating pair of Teostra and Lunastra was observed, all the way in the New World. To this day, no mating pair has ever been seen in the Old World. Studying these flame dragons is
Because
quite
they're
difficult,
dead.
as all of their materials are highly flammable and can explode without warning. Be that as it may, the guild still pushed on and managed to gain various insights into this fascinating dragon species. Their habitat range is mostly confined to hot regions, such as volcanoes or deserts, but they have on occasion been spotted in swamps as well. They are mostly terrestrial and don't seem to fly often. The female Lunastra is considered a more competent flyer, while the male Teostra seems to prefer staying on the ground. In fact, for a long time, it was believed that the male had entirely lost the ability to fly, until Teostras in the New World were observed flying with ease. Both sexes are surprisingly agile on land, having specialized back feet with pads and claws that allow them to propel themselves off the ground with explosive force. As they travel, the flame dragons feed not on plant or animal life, but on ores. Both males and females have been seen eating minerals by biting through cave walls. They have also, on occasion, been seen snacking on fire herbs and nitro shrooms. While there is some debate on if one can even call this eating, as it is just a consumption of minerals, these materials seem at the very least to be essential to maintaining the dragon's body. Specifically, these materials seem to fuel the flame dragon's main ability, its total control over flame and heat. The body temperature of this dragon species is absurdly high, while it itself is entirely immune to the effects of heat. Both the shell and the fur of the flame dragon are tough and resistant to heat, and can even repel physical attacks. The ores and minerals the dragon consumes are processed in the body into two components: a highly flammable gas and a waste material in form of a powder. The gas can be mixed with the dragon's saliva into a burning oil, which allows the Teostra and Lunastra to spew out streams of fire from their mouths. For reasons that aren't clear to the guild, the flames of the female burn much hotter than those of the male,
Like, there's actually an
giving their
explanation
fire
for this
breaths
one.
a distinct color as well. Teostra's flames are the typical orange, while Lunastra's breath is a scorching blue, reserved
Lunastra
only
looks extra
for the
cute in this
fiercest
one.
of all flames. The ability to spit near endless quantities of fire would by itself make these two extremely dangerous. But the fury of the flame dragons comes in two distinct forms, both ferocious in their own right. Most commonly seen is the Flame Shroud, the dragon's first line of defense. This technique envelops the body of the dragon in its flammable gas, as it burns invisibly in the air. This manifests as an aura of intense
blue,
heat
red.
around the dragon,
And I
with tiny
prefer
flames
the...
itself make these two extremely dangerous. But the fury of the flame dragons comes in two distinct forms, both ferocious in their own. The tiny nicknames distort air, however, dragons. This shroud does more than just distort air, however.
I like this one over the wind.
The temperature difference between the air immediately around the body and the air further away creates a sort of pocket that can divert and even repel projectile attacks. But more importantly, the rising temperature around the dragon makes even being near it deadly. Not even guild-approved cool drinks can protect a human from perishing in the infernal heat of a Teostra or Lunastra's proximity. This has even wider effects. As a constant emitter of extreme heat, the very presence of a flame dragon alters the climate of a region, causing heat waves and, over prolonged periods of time, a deadly drought. A walking disaster indeed.
Okay, so yeah, now these ones I understand.
Thanks to their increased internal
we actually have to take
the
care
flame
of this.
dragons
It should
also
not be
become
here.
more proficient at using their fire breath while the flame shroud is active. As the body heats up and the shroud becomes stronger, the mane of the flame dragon glows intensely, an indicator of their power. The second application of the flame dragon's power is called the Blast Shroud, and utilizes the powder that is left over after turning the ingested ores into gas. This powder is theoretically a waste product, but the flame dragons find use for it all the same. Through the skin, the powder is ejected and accumulated in the fur, especially among the tiny hairs that cover the underside of the dragon's wing membranes. Usually, this powder simply stays in the fur and passively falls off. To activate the Blast Shroud, the dragon begins emitting copious amounts of this powder, which begins floating off the body continuously. This powder is usually harmless, but when primed by the high temperature of the air surrounding the dragon, it becomes extremely explosive. The flame dragon can ignite this blast powder by creating a spark, using either its flint-like teeth, claws, or wingtips. Curiously, the male Teostra seems to prefer using its teeth more so than the female Lunastra. Either way, this gives the dragon a highly explosive offensive option. The powder can either be deposited nearby with simple body motions or spread across a wider area by flapping the wings. Once a spark is created, it ripples across the clouds of powder and ignites all of them. The specific application of their blast shroud is also where the two sexes differ the most. The powder produced by the male Teostra is light and floats in the air naturally. The male can thus create clouds of blast powder that hover around as time bombs, waiting for their master to spark them into detonation. The powder of the female Lunastra, meanwhile, is dense and heavy. Instead of floating, it falls to the ground in piles. When sparked, it doesn't merely explode, but alights into a raging spire of blue flame that lingers on the ground as the remaining powder burns away. The density of the powder makes the burning reaction much more violent, releasing huge amounts of energy while the flames linger. This manifests in wind blasts, which could prevent targets from moving and trap them in a blue inferno. What is consistent between the two dragons, however, is the incredible degree of control they have over their powders. Both the Teostra and especially the Lunastra can control the precise quantity, location, and even movement
Oh,
of their
thank you for
blast
the heads up.
powders. How
I
this
was
is
so locked in
possible
on
is
this.
unknown, but hunters have noted that as the blast shroud is kept active, the horns of the dragons begin to glow. Horns, being key to an elder dragon's ability, is a known pattern, and it appears that the flame dragons further confirm it.
Classic Sukov.
Curiously, the blast shroud is not just a combat ability. Researchers have observed flame dragons activating it in low-stress situations and simply detonating the powder near or even on their bodies. The current hypothesis is that this mechanism is originally meant to be used as a way of cleaning off grime and dirt from the dragon's shell, and that weaponizing it emerged as a secondary application. When fighting, the flame dragons will periodically cycle between their two shrouds. Why they do this was long unknown, since most enemies wouldn't live to see more than 1 or 2 cycles at most anyway. It was only as the average skill level of monster hunters increased that hunting parties could push Teost and Lunastra hard enough to witness what the purpose of their shroud cycle really was. As the dragons use their shrouds,
also
their
happened to all
bodies
the other
become
hunters
hotter and
who got
hotter,
skill issued.
as well as coated in more and more blast powder. After enough cycles, these factors reach a zenith, at which point they can be unleashed as a devastating ultimate attack. Both sexes use this opportunity differently. The Teostra's method is blunt and straightforward. Once it notices the time has come, it flies into the air and curls up, covering as much of itself with powder as possible while also spreading much of it into the surrounding area. By spiking its body temperature beyond its usual limits rapidly, the Teostra ignites all of the powder at once, causing a chain reaction resulting in a singular, massive explosion. The guild calls this move supernova, as it reminded many scholars of that most violent astronomical event. The Lunastra's approach is more sophisticated. As its body heats up, air pockets form around it as a result of temperature gradients. When the time is right, the Lunastra ignites its powder like the Teostra, but instead of having it detonate on its body, it forces the powder into the air pockets, which burst outward in the process. The result is a massive wave of blue flame, as the burning powder is accelerated and dispersed by the bursting air pockets across a wide area, creating a sea of blue fire that emanates heat and pulses with wind pressure. Guild hunters call this attack Hellflare, as the deepest depths of the Inferno must look quite similar to the aftermath of this move.
Okay.
Their abilities make the flame dragons extremely dangerous,
I have to say,
and due to
these
their
two,
body temperature, their mere appearance is enough to cause immense damage to any ecosystem. But luckily, they generally stay away from populated areas, and
I think they have the most clever tie-in between their biology and then the way they do that in gameplay. I just love the way that the whole powder thing that they produce from the ores that they eat turns into those big moves, and it's not just oh, it's a dragon, of course I can do that. No. They took it a step further.
stick to remote volcanic regions. In the wild, one can observe slight behavioral differences between the sexes. While both are extremely aggressive and violent towards any kind of opponent, they express it in different ways. The male Teostra is proactive and curious, actively investigating its surroundings. This makes it a slightly more problematic creature, as it has, on occasion, wandered into human
There's even
settlements looking to snack on
an
their store
explanation
of
why Lunastras
gunpowder,
is like
a delicious treat in the eyes of the
burning
flame
gasoline on the
dragons.
ground.
In the old world, the
Not
Teostra is
just, oh, it's
quite
just
feared,
because it's
as
stronger.
it will attack almost immediately upon spotting anything it perceives as worth fighting. Curiously, the Teostra found in the New World are much more relaxed, and generally more averse to open conflict with anything that isn't a fellow Elder Dragon. The female Lunastra, meanwhile, is a guarded, vigilant dragon, always on the lookout, bordering on paranoid. That is why Lunastra sightings are much rarer comparatively. Lunastra are also known to maintain their flame shroud at almost all times, even when not in overt danger, as opposed to the Teostra, which only activates it in response
They're
to
only
a
a little
threat.
paranoid, isn't it?
When forced to battle, a Lunastra is more ferocious than her partner, its vigilance blossoming into cruel wrath. In the Old World, Lunastra were, however, also known to be quite skittish. Should a fight drag on, the female dragon
Oh
would
my
often
god, that was
flee
so...
instead of
no.
prolonging the encounter, a calculated move to minimize effort on her part. The guild even had to establish a rule at one point that only one hunter may face a Lunastra at a time, since a larger group would scare the dragon away again. This behavior is completely absent in New World Lunastra, which will always stand their ground to the bitter end. The New World was, in general, a breakthrough for the study of flame dragons, mostly because it was the first time a mating pair had been identified. While footprints and abandoned nests found on the eastern continent of Funron had long since confirmed that the Teostra and Lunastra do in fact mate, it wasn't until 50 years into the New World expedition that the two dragons were observed pairing up. The resulting insights into their behavior and courtship rituals are to this day some of the most influential work the guild has ever compiled. Teostra and Lunastra seem to pair up for life, and their union is preceded by a meticulous courtship phase. First, the male Teostra must find a lava lake or similar location of sorts. Then, by carefully melting and then cooling rock and lava on top of each other, the male forms a sort of island in the lake, a rocky platform amidst the lava. This arena serves as a proving ground for the male's control over its flame. A lava lake is unstable and chaotic, with random eruptions that rearrange the landscape constantly. To build a nest here and maintain it is the mark of a true master of flame, and the tidier and flatter this plateau is, the more attractive the Teostra is to any visiting Lunastra. The dragons then shake their manes as they inspect each other, and researchers have noted that Teostras with larger manes seem to have more success than those with smaller ones. Once the partnership is established, the two dragons become inseparable, with the Lunastra surveying the skies while the Teostra prowls the ground. The most spectacular expression of their partnership comes when both dragons are engaged in a fight against a common enemy. The pair will synchronize its shroud cycle such that they both reach criticality at the same time. The two then unleash their ultimate moves together, Teostra's supernova merging with Lunastra's hellflare into a devastating double explosion. While this is terrible for whatever unfortunate souls the pair was fighting, the dragons use this moment to reaffirm their bond to each other. It appears reasonable to assert that this pairing behavior is key to the life of flame dragons. This makes the fact that it has never been seen in Old World individuals all the more baffling. Some scholars suggested that the flame dragons found in the New World were a regional variation that simply pairs up more frequently and openly, while the Old World variation is more reclusive. There was some merit to the idea, as New World flame dragons displayed a few physiological and behavioral differences. The Teostra is better at flying, the Lunastra is more aggressive, both are more agile, and both have more hair on their bodies, including
Wait,
a
didn't I
larger
just say
mane.
that the Teostra is
These
like barely
could
found
be
flying?
indicators of speciation or, at the very least, regional variation. However, a counter-hypothesis was proposed recently, one that has become quite dominant. The differences between Old World and New World flame dragons might actually be age-related. A more developed mane, a better grasp of one's physical abilities, a deeper expression of one's personality. These could be signs of more mature individuals of the species. The hypothesis thus postulates that the flame dragons of the New World are individuals that have reached sexual maturity. That would explain why no pairs were ever seen in the Old World. Those dragons are simply too young on average. Once they are strong enough to fly across the sea, they migrate to the new continent and meet up to begin their courtship. This might also explain why the Lunastra is so aggressive, as she might be affected by hormonal changes that are related to the mating season. This also fits nicely with the established fact that the New World's Elder Crossing tends to attract older dragons on average. Why the flame dragons would migrate instead of just pairing up in the Old World is, however, still a mystery, and no convincing theories have thus far been constructed.
Is that why Monster Hunter World attracts older Monster Hunter players? It all makes sense.
The effort to understand Elder Dragons may just be the single most practical benefit of the Hunters Guild's existence. The ability to predict and contain wandering calamities has protected humanity for generations now, after all. However, it is by far not the only boon. One must remember that the Hunters Guild is not the name of one large cohesive organization, but rather an umbrella term of many local guilds that collaborate closely to form a collective network. As research and hunting efforts grew, more and more organizations joined in, bound themselves to the conglomerate we now call the Hunters Guild. Before long, the sheer volume of manpower and resources available to this collective outshined any other in recorded history. Many scholars, hunters, and administrators thus realized that they could do so much more than just collect notes on how to defeat dragons and repel wyverns. And so, the operations of the guild were expanded to encompass all sorts of research and study, from engineering to medicine to economics, all to protect and progress man and wyverian kind. One of the earliest expansions was the guild's foray into archaeology. Through their attempts at unraveling myths and legends to discover more monsters, many guild representatives had already come into favorable contact with archaeological and historical organizations. It soon became clear that there would be much to learn from those disciplines, as every known continent is downright littered with ruins of ancient civilizations, their secrets yet untouched. And so, before long, the guild began collaborating with archaeological efforts to launch hunter-led expeditions into various ruins and dig sites. There were plenty to choose from, as the world had not been home to just one, but rather to countless different ancient civilizations, from the ruined island temples of the ancient Mogans, to the bloodied remnants of Old Kamura, to the mysterious lost people of the Everwood. The known world was full of the unknown. But no mystery, no historical thread could ever compare to the tantalizing allure of Funron, the eastern continent. While various areas of the central continent held spots and blotches of ancient ruins, the entire northern zone of Funron was believed to be covered in multiple ruined cities. Across the horizon, as far as the eyes could see, traces of a world long gone. It was thus only
I hope
natural
Wild
that
6
many
is there.
expeditions were sent into Fonron. Through their work on Tigrex and Nargacuga research, the guild already had some experience venturing into the continent, and had even made some tentative contact with the reclusive
Holy.
indigenous population. However, none of the natives were willing to venture near the ruined cities, warning the guild of the dangers that lurked near the central tower especially. The guild took additional precautions, but, perhaps foolishly, did nonetheless venture deeper into the ruins. For a time, it was a buffet of insights, ancient knowledge being recovered essentially daily with no real trouble. A few fierce monsters did approach the camp here and there, but nothing the assigned hunters could not handle. Then, one day, teams began to go missing. Suddenly, contact with a team would cut out, and when hunters were dispatched to check on them, all they would find is their notes, and sometimes their shoes. Aside from that, these researchers would vanish without a trace. No struggle or monster tracks would be found. They were just gone.
That's kind of spooky. Their shoes were left behind? I mean, if we take like Japanese context behind that, that's
Around the same time, some of the survey teams on Fonron began reporting a bizarre sight. A floating island hovering above the skies of a ruined city. At first, these reports were entirely unexplainable. But one day, the main team in charge of the Fonron expedition sighted the island as well. It was a massive ball of soil with 6 hanging vines floating high above the ground.
Then they see God.
Such an unprecedented phenomena just had to be studied, and so the researchers rushed after it, following it all the way to the central tower, at the top of which the island halted its movement. While some scholars rushed up the broken stairs to see the anomaly up close, some stayed behind. Their curiosity beckoned them upwards, but there was an instinct, an ancient impulse, screaming at them to stay away. Those that raced to the top of the tower were greeted by an otherworldly sight. An island floating right there in front of them. Immediately, they went to work, climbing on top of it and collecting samples, sketching its size and calculating its flight path. Then, a flash of light, and one of the researchers exploded mid-scream. Before the others had time to react, one by one, they were hit by small, flying wisps of light that vaporized their bodies on impact. The island roared, it opened its eyes. It had been a gigantic monster all along. The
Is it the
remaining team
Discworld
members
turtle?
rushed away and escaped the creature, which had begun floating away again. It was only under
It's all
intense
bright light,
interrogation
and they
that
were
these
gone.
survivors even told the guild of the story in the first place. They had sworn never to think of it or any monster research ever again. This event shook the upper levels of the guild thoroughly. Across all of their research, no scholar or expert had ever encountered anything like this. Moreover, the guild wasn't quite sure how to move forward on this. The creature in question had vanished, and tracking something that can vaporize a human instantly is an extremely dangerous task. One scholar proposed to scour the archives of old monster reports that the guild had received to see if any unresolved cases matched the description of this bizarre attacker. This ended up being a smart move, and old reports matching this case were indeed dug up. These sightings had mostly occurred on the eastern coast of the central continent, especially in Terosu's jungles. The reports all described some manner of floating squid or octopus, massive and covered
Some
in
squid
plants.
elephant thing.
While the exact details of its appearance
Yeah,
varied
like
greatly,
the
it was
drugs are
better
kind of
than
cute
nothing.
though.
Carefully, the guild mounted research investigations that surveyed the skies between Terosu and Fonron, and, soon enough,
And of course it
more
was in
sightings of the
Funron.
creature emerged. Before long,
Wait,
the
they
guild
actually
was
have
able to
footage of it?
compile a tentative file on the monster, and classified it as an elder dragon named Yama-Tsukami. By all metrics, the Yama-Tsukami is perhaps the most unusual creature ever discovered in guild history, even to this day.
I want to pet
Nothing
it.
matching its body shape or anatomy
But
has ever been found.
whoa, those
The
teeth though.
Yama-Tsukami is a massive, ball-shaped elder dragon with 4 long tentacles and 2 whiskers. Its eyes are on its back, and its mouth is on its underside. Its back is entirely covered with plants, and it is entirely unknown what the creature looks like without this cover of foliage. The immense danger of approaching it has made researching it quite difficult, but a few morsels of knowledge have been established. The Yama-Tsukami appears to be
Yo,
quite old.
did you see that?
For
It looks like
vegetation to grow on
hyper-realistic
it
in
like
there.
this, its life must be long. Some scholars have even nicknamed it the oldest dragon, but the guild does not officially endorse that title as of now. The first feature of the dragon that the guild investigated was the way it moves. The Yama-Tsukami floats in the air like a balloon, never touching the ground of its own volition.
They even like
It
described
does
it
this
like
by
some
expelling a
Lovecraftian thing.
light
It's
gas
like
from its body,
they went and saw
using
something
a specialized
and
set
they're never
of
to be
gills
seen
on its
again.
underside. While it
In the picture is the cameraman, by the way.
usually
Only
floats
he could
around
get
slowly,
close.
the Yama-Tsukami can accelerate drastically, moving faster than one would expect from such an enormous creature. The gas that allows for this is a byproduct of the Yama-Tsukami's diet. The dragon floats around in search for a suitable feeding spot.
Hear me
Once
out.
it has found one, the giant mouth opens, revealing a set of disturbingly human-like teeth.
I don't think I will
With
this
maw
time.
agape, the Yama-Tsukami inhales air with tremendous force, as if a giant vacuum had just opened up in the sky. The suction of this behavior
one
is
looks like a head
immense,
crab.
and the dragon uses it to suck up trees, hills, mounds of earth, and entire
guess we
lakes
could.
all in one swoop. It appears that it can digest just about anything. The guild has, unfortunately, been able to confirm that this also includes humans. A handful of researchers have been lost to the Yama-Tsukami's appetite.
I don't think it eats it, but it just goes
Once
like this.
inside the body, the dragon's meal decomposes into its flight gas, fueling the ability further. This feeding behavior is the most problematic part of the dragon's existence, as it can devastate ecosystems within mere minutes by sucking them up and leaving behind a wasteland. But not everything that is sucked up is digested. Great thunderbugs are a species of beetle, similar to thunder and fulgur bugs, that are native to Terosu and Fronron. Like their cousins, great thunderbugs can store and release electricity, but they're generally skittish and not inclined to aggression. For whatever reason, great thunderbugs that are swallowed by a Yama-Tsukami are not digested. Some scholars have theorized that their shell may be uniquely resistant to whatever compound the dragon uses as a digestive fluid, but this hasn't been confirmed yet. The result of this, however, is that great thunderbugs usually survive being sucked up and begin living inside the dragon's body. While this provides them with safety, it also changes them. Perhaps due to the unique environment inside of an elder dragon's body, the great thunderbugs become exceptionally strong and aggressive, storing enormous amounts of electricity in the process. This serves the Yama-Tsukami well, and opens up a new offensive ability. When bothered or threatened, the dragon can spit out these great thunderbugs towards its target. Mad with
Holy.
rage and seething with thunder, the bugs scream towards the nearest target and release all of their stored electricity in a blinding detonation on contact. This blast can easily disintegrate a human instantly, and it was this attack that vaporized those poor researchers that first discovered the Yama-Tsukami.
Yo, they even got him while he was in Chameleon's
This
armor.
symbiotic relationship with great thunderbugs thus grants the dragon another devastating ability. And yet, expeditions to research it continued despite the risks, because researchers remained fascinated with it. On a few occasions, daring scholars were able to jump onto the back of a sleeping Yamatsukami to explore the flora growing on it. The back of the dragon secretes a thick black fluid that has been found to be extremely nutrient-rich, a fertilizer that aids in the growth of these plants. Beyond that, it seems to also empower them, as plants taken from a Yamatsukami's back are imbued with an energy similar to that found in elder dragon blood. Most curiously, the actual species of plants and flowers found here are completely unrelated to any flora seen in Terosu or Funron, implying that the travel range of the Yamatsukami is much wider than has so far been determined. Unfortunately, much remains unknown about the creature. Despite its size, the Yamatsukami is extremely elusive, and it has been several decades since the last sighting occurred. On the bright side, this dragon does not appear near human settlements often. While it has rarely been spotted as far west as the gates of Dundorma, it mostly avoids populated areas and thus poses little immediate threat. But it nonetheless remains etched into the minds of anyone who reads of its discovery, the floating guardian of the East, whose wisps of light turn humans to ash within seconds. Any expedition into Funron must thus consider the risk of encountering a Yamatsukami, however unlikely it may be.
You know what, I always wonder, it's like, they should be careful in case they might come across one of these terrible beings. But every time the story's been like, oh, let's go climb it. We gotta see what's on there. Let's go poke it with a stick and get some samples.
It is impossible to imagine what the Hunters Guild, and humanity at large, would be today without the work done during the second generation. Would we all have perished in some Elder Dragon incident? Or would we have lived on, ignorant of so many vibrant, amazing creatures living just east of us? The fact of reality is, the dedication and ambition of those researchers and hunters lives on even today, as their works remain the foundation for much of what we now know of monsters and of our home. The world may seem incalculably complex, but before the combined drive of human and Wyverian minds, it too gives way, revealing its secrets slowly but steadily.
Yeah, that was close.
Hello everyone, and thank you so much for watching. I'm sorry this one took so long, but
it took a whole year.
Probably tell from the size
and half of the time was
video.
was just uploading it.
Quite a task. I hope you enjoyed.
Yay,
and I will hear from you soon again after I go sleep for however long it takes me to recover from this. I want to give very special thanks to the lovely people in the Monster Hunter lore community who've helped me out with this. Band Lagaya Chris, Gagiru Celtas, Zuxvang, Goji, everyone, Lutyrannus, Dissy, everyone who's helped out and who's worked on the lore before.
We finally
very
learned.
Special thank you.
Are you guys ready for the quiz?
Crab, whose reshade presets really helped bring the look of this video together.
Monster
and of course,
shell.
A big
Does the
thank you
Shin
to all
written
of my
where?
lovely patrons. I want to especially thank Regal Eagle, Ronger97, Quali, Elzendo Carlo, My Name Gone, The Dollarfish, Yamiroth,
Teacher, the bell is ringing. Oh, no, oh yeah, you're right. Don't forget to pick up your homework before you go, okay?
Zion H.
It's due on Monday.
AJ Rivera.
Make sure you actually do it.
Alistair, Jacob the Numbnut, Soruka, King Greatest.
Let's go find
Newton,
somebody to rate. Somebody's playing World or something.
Rambling Robin, Black Ace 202, Dissy, Habo Himbro Mirror, Magenta, Danilo
There's Homer.
Villavicencio.
Yeah, of course.
Arcturian
come back, Casta.
Russell,
Stop heading to the door. Come back.
Lermy Boone, Oakwood Tree,
So I'm not
Mr.
even
Pyramid,
No, you always
Makoto
hurting me.
2, Geo, Jamie Tate,
Who needs
Nils Schlatter, Iron Camel, Nah,
Thank
I'm
you.
going to bed, MH1 have one too,
Milk?
Shebo, Matthew Chung, Hashi, Hellbug Hunter, and the Baka Potato.
I feel
Thank you guys
knowledgeable.
again, and I'll see you around. Take care, my friends.
We're gonna like stream again in, man, what is it, 5 hours from now? Gonna play Pacify, so I need to go to sleep. I'm doing double time today. Gonna play with Sieg. Let's go. This is the first one I saw, so why not? Why not? A description that says brain slow, so I can relate with that. No, I can't. I can't go play Deadlock when I'm dead inside. Thanks again, everyone, for being here. Be back in 5 hours now. But good night. Take care. Mama. I'm gonna send you over.